That's how it all starts. Okay, so it's time to get going. So welcome everybody to the Nancy Drew talk show. We just completed a marathon of all the PC entries of the Nancy Drew games. It was a hell of a time. 2 weeks, all the games back to back, no rest for the wicked. And in order to round it all off, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss all of the runs and the games that we had during that time, and create a tier list, a definitive tier list of how good each of the Nancy Drew games are. I myself and DDR Jake, I ran 3 of the Nancy Drew games prior to the marathon, and I am joined by...
Hi, I'm a fan of gaming. I ran Labyrinth of Lies in the marathon, and it was quite fun.
Hi, I'm HeldenUK. I ran the latest game, which is Midnight in Salem, and I was pretty good at it, I think.
Good is not the word I would use.
Yeah.
Alright, my name's Uristocrat, or True Leveler, I guess. I played the Ghost of Castle Malloy. It was an interesting experience. We learned a lot of things about chemistry.
and angry chemists.
we, that periodic table, I've got it down now. Got it down.
Okay,
yeah, other than that,
we'll get to our Irish experiences in a bit. So we're going to go through the games in chronological order. And we're starting with the hot 1998 release, Secrets Can Kill. Now, this was ran by IFT Clerk, and a really simple rundown of the plot is there's this jerk in school named Jake. He's blackmailing everyone, and he got done in, so you need to solve his murder by going undercover there. So this was a game, it had some real rough downsides as being the first. I mean, it was set in high school, it was set in Florida, not off to a great start. Any hot takes on the game from any of you?
So one thing I want to say right off the bat is that despite being the oldest one, it had a pretty good look to it because of the hand-drawn animations that a lot of the later ones just couldn't capture.
Yeah, it was. It's worth noting this was the only one that had the 2D, the 2D art style for everything before it moved on to the, shall we say, acquired taste of the 3D models that were used henceforth. And okay, the game was super clunky, but I think it holds a certain charm. And not to mention, it was the first one that came out. You expect things to get better as things go on, so I'm willing to give it a lot of brownie points for being the trailblazer of the Nancy Drew games.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not sure things necessarily got better. They certainly went on.
They did.
They definitely went on, but...
Yeah, we also have IFT Clerk's run of it, and it was pretty clinical, right? He beat it so fast in a single slot that he was even able to do the remake of it. And I'm just going to be judging the two together because they didn't really change much other than the look to it for the remake.
Yeah,
the Game of the Year edition wasn't that much different, was it?
Imagine how confident you have to be to download the remake ahead of time and to be ready to stream it after you've destroyed the original.
Yeah, I gotta say, IFT put a lot of runners to shame with his performance when it comes to Nancy Drew. So honestly, the game has a lot of shortcomings. It was really anticlimactic towards the end, and there were almost no puzzles in the whole game. Mm-hmm. But given its charm and given it was a trailblazer, I'm willing to put this one right slap in the middle with so-so. I don't. Okay, it had downsides, but I think it's saved by being the trailblazer. Any opposition to that?
I don't disagree. I mean, it's kind of like the benchmark, right?
Yeah.
We'll judge every other.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So all the other Nancy Drews are going to be judged against this. I mean, if you just judge the Nancy Drew games as games, they are honestly quite terrible. But we're thinking as Nancy Drew games, how are they here? So I think it's quite fair that we give the benefit of the doubt to Secrets Can Kill here. And then we can segue into the second game, 1999 Stay Tuned for Danger. This was run by Kronos5884. And in this one, there's a hunky TV man getting death threats, and Nancy Drew is going to sleuth around on set for some god-awful Saturday morning TV show. Yeah, this one was awful, right? I'm just going to go out and say it was pretty bad. It was barely a game.
And visually, it was just so awful to look at. Like, it didn't have the good, like, hand-drawn animations of the previous game, and in addition, with their 3D models, they were all extremely jerky. Like, every time someone spoke, they, like, threw their arm 90 degrees across the screen. It was terrible.
Yeah, and about that speaking, like, the voice acting was really quite abysmal in Stay Tuned for Danger. It was really painful, honestly, to get through. On top of that, the game had really terrible triggers. You had to do certain things in order to progress the game, and most of them were really asinine or out of the way, or not really puzzles. Just stumble into this thing so you can move along. It also had the time-based mechanics. So you could check your watch for what time it is, but that meant certain things had to be done at certain times. It was pretty bad, and the music sucked too.
A lot of games would go on to use that time mechanic, and I don't think it was fun in any of them.
Nope.
No, I'd struggle to say so. Is there anything that redeemed the game? Anything at all?
According to one newspaper reviewer, the game has a certain voyeuristic charm, and I don't know what that means.
Oh god.
That's like one of those anti-compliments, right? Your voyeuristic charm of Stay Tuned for Danger. Well, it's worth bringing up that when we were doing this marathon, we referred to Sassy Detective, which until today was the definitive place to go to for Nancy Drew information. And they put this as a tier 2, so the second highest tier for Stay Tuned for Danger, and I am struggling.
Yeah, that's madness.
One thing I'd say is the game had alright puzzles. Not good puzzles, but I thought they were alright. And unlike Secrets Can Kill, the puzzles did exist. But I don't know, I'm stuck between slamming this one as poor or terrible.
I don't think it's terrible because it's not like actively in your face bad like some of the later ones will be, but it's just so forgettable to me. I didn't think it stood out much at all.
That's a good point right there. A lot of the later games had things that really just drove home how terrible it was, and we will get to those, and that was void here. There was nothing truly terrible.
I wouldn't put it in terrible because at least it didn't overstay its welcome. It was longer than the first game, obviously, but it was like what? I think Sassy has it down as like 2.5 hours. Kronos, I think, was not far behind that.
All right, so we're gonna have Helden as our benchmark for when things truly get terrible, because he is the one that knows that. One thing I want to say about Stay Tuned for Danger before we move on to Haunted Mansion is that the runner for this one, Kronos, she came in out of nowhere, right? She wasn't a channel regular or anything, just came in and said, hey, I'll pick up a game. And I got to admire the gall to come in and do that, especially for such a god-awful game as this. And, somebody else, was it Nyx that tried to do this before and failed miserably too?
What happened with that? Because I couldn't find the VODs.
Wasn't there like a sound card issue with this game?
Nyx was on a limited timer and could not get it done, and I don't blame him. Right, it was a peculiar one. All right, so we're saying this one is poor, which is probably giving it very much the benefit of the doubt in it, but we'll move swiftly on, shall we? Okay, so in 2000 for the PC, and indeed the Game Boy Advance in 2001, Message in a Haunted Mansion came out as the third Nancy Drew. Now in this one, Nancy is lodging in a San Francisco Victorian mansion. Wasn't aware that was even a thing. The place is trying to become a bed and breakfast, but it is haunted, and Nancy Drew, ever the skeptic, is going to get to the bottom of this. Now, Max A100 is our runner. We're going to bring him right in. There we go. Max, are you in? Can you hear us?
Hello.
Oh, welcome. So we're just talking about your game, Message in a Haunted Mansion. This is the first time we get a runner of their game to come in. Why don't you just tell us your thoughts and feelings about the game?
Well, the game was pretty okay. It was a bit short. I finished in like, I don't know, 4 hours or something like that. I don't remember the exact time. But I never felt like it was really terrible in any way. Like, the characters were fine. It didn't really have the more involved puzzles that we get later on in the series. They were all pretty simple ones.
I'd say that's a recurring theme in the early games, that they weren't really heavy on the puzzles at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so much puzzling involved in creating a facial for somebody. Although that base puzzle did reappear with like cookies and pies later on. But I thought it was fairly robust as the game went, personally. It didn't have anything too bad or too good, except it ended extremely abruptly.
Yeah, and that's pretty much a theme across a lot of the games, I feel. But yeah, you didn't really get resolution for some of the other characters that had also been involved in some kind of shady stuff, so that was a bit of a letdown. And there were a few problems with the progression where, like, I think I did use one hint from the phone, because there was a thing you had to click on that was right next to another thing, and it wasn't obvious at all. And they hadn't really nailed the indication for what's clickable and not yet, or what moves you across screens, whereas what's actually interactable.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but kudos to you. You did storm through the game and get it done nice and quickly. You didn't stall out at any point, so either you're too good or the game wasn't all that hard.
Yeah, it wasn't that hard. Like, the worst progression blocker was the part where you have to go back through the entire game and find these Chinese characters that you hadn't paid any attention to before, because you didn't realize they'd be part of a puzzle. Fortunately, I did manage to solve the puzzle without having to find all 10 of them. I think I found 8 and solved the 2 by other means, so that would have been extremely painful if I'd had to find all the 10, because it's the worst part in games like this, when you have to go through every area again looking for something and you don't know if you've seen it yet or not.
Oh yeah, I think probably about fully half of the runners had that experience, myself included, and it does suck.
But how do we feel this reflects on Haunted Mansion overall? Because I would never put it down in terrible. I'm fighting between so-so and poor on this one. It feels more like Secrets Can Kill in terms of quality to me.
I would actually put it up in good, because I didn't see any real big problems with it. Like, I enjoyed my time with it. It's not like great. It doesn't have amazing characters like Gunnar or the Parrot or other standouts from the series, and it doesn't have amazing puzzles. But I'd say, like, if we're working on a scale from outstanding to terrible, I'd say it goes in great rather than so-so. But
I would put it in so-so, just on the basis that it doesn't really stand out compared to.
Yeah, when I say good, like, I want it to actually be good relating to all the other Nancy Drew games. And this one, okay, granted, Max, you're the one that played the game, but I'm not seeing the good in it. I'm seeing the okay in it.
Given, like, judging it also by the fact that it is the 3rd entry in the series, and a lot of the things hadn't been, like, well established yet, I would, like, maybe I'm cutting it a bit of slack based on that, and that's why I would put it in good. If you want to judge it, like, on a more even level with the much later games, then yeah, I suppose it might still end up in so-so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not willing to give it the slack for being the 3rd. Granted, it's out of 33 games, but all right. Well, you had a good run of it, and we're saying this one goes into the so-so. So thanks for giving us your insight to it, Max, and we will run along to the 4th entry.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks, Max. Before we move on, quick shout out to Max for stepping up as a slot filler later in the marathon with the dossier games. That was really nice.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So we did do this marathon back-to-back with pretty much no gaps in it, but that did mean we needed wildcard detectives to fill in whenever a gap was threatening to appear. Okay, moving on to the 4th game, Treasure in the Royal Tower, PC release 2001. Now, in this one, Nancy's just bumbling around in some tower, and it's infested with a bunch of weirdos. In fact, this is a time where you meet Hotchkiss in person there. and it was ran by none other than Worm, who's actually around. So we're gonna bring in old Worm. Welcome, Worm. Welcome, Worm.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We hear you. We hear you twice even. You're echoing like crazy there.
Okay, let me just check that.
Just mute your stream, Worm. Just mute the stream you're watching.
This is a lot like Worm
Okay,
running the game
now.
himself.
There
All
we
right,
go.
so
I can't hear anything.
Jeez. In any case,
So now?
Worm, this is your game.
I
Treasure
hear
in the
someone
Royal
laughing,
Tower.
so I'm here, hopefully.
Fantastic. Okay, let's just get going with a rundown of your game here. So I was laughing quite a bit at watching your game, which I must point out
now,
on...
can somebody hear me?
We hear you loud and clear, Worm. Yes, we do. I'm not sure he knows what's going on. Like, Nancy Drew ruined a lot of people mentally,
Nancy Drew
myself included.
Destroyed Worm.
So let's just let old man Worm be. Right, as I was saying, Sassy Detectives actually put this as a tier 1 game. They thought it was fantastic, one of the best, and I have to interject there and disagree massively, personally. The game had a distinct lack of puzzles within it. The fatal error scenes were completely lacking, and in order to make progress within the game, you had to do these repeating puzzles. You had to pull down these chains just to go back and forth within an area. And there was a lot of back and forthing to figure the game out. And on top of that, it had Hotchkiss, who is not my favourite of characters. So I need to turn to the rest of you and say, please give us some redeeming elements to this game.
Well, I quite liked Hotchkiss, actually. She's one of my favorite recurring side characters in the series.
Well, there we go. That's the hot takes that people are here to hear.
One thing the game did do, it was the first to do it, is that it kind of started tying in like actual historical events into the main plot that a lot of later games would go on to do, and I think that's probably why Sassy liked it so much.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like Sassy measures things on how much of a detective sleuthing feel there was to it, whereas we tend to be more focused on the puzzles. I think that's fine, but we'll keep that in mind going forward. Any other hot takes on it? Worm, if he's still there and sane, can you give us any insights from your run?
I'm just wondering if Worm's ever going to solve the mystery of his microphone setup.
Who knows?
Okay, well there's another slight against the game. It did not turn its own runner into the master detective that he should be.
Okay. Is someone there? Is that echo?
The echo's
There is an echo, yeah.
Okay, right. I think we're gonna relegate Worm back into his tower. He didn't solve the mystery of the tower, and
I think he's been trapped in the tower. He's like screaming for help.
So this game also represented another first that I noticed. It might have happened before, but this is the first game that I noticed Jake breaking down and like blatantly helping the runner finish the game.
Oh my days. Worm had a special way of running this one, and it was the first one that really made me just start actually screaming at the screen, like, what is wrong with you? And throwing out all sorts of things I certainly shouldn't be saying. So maybe I should elevate it in the rankings for that, it was an evocative game, if nothing else.
Does this make you feel sympathetic for the people who watch you play these games, Jake?
No, not that far. Not yet, at least.
It was very tedious. I don't think it's terrible. I definitely don't think it's good.
No, I don't think it's quite terrible because it didn't have certain... yes, there was a repeating puzzle, but there was nothing that really made you start scratching your face in agony as to how bad it was. But I couldn't put it any higher than Stay Tuned for Danger. It just wasn't that great. Far from.
I think 4 is about right.
Okay. Right, speaking of poor, let's move on to number 5, The Final Scene, 2001 release. I think this is when they shifted over to doing 2 releases per year by Her Interactive of the Nancy Drew games. This one was ran by Joe Pro, and in this one, Nancy's friend Maya is kidnapped, and Nancy has to stall the demolition of a theater to save the girl's life. I don't have a lot to say about this one personally. I was watching it, I thought it was pretty dull, and I did think the game had particularly low production standards. I don't know if we have Joe Pro around to defend the game. Looks like we don't, so it's up to us to either rake it over the hot coals or cut it some slack. Anybody got some input on this one?
It just didn't really stand out to me either, to be honest.
Yeah.
So no one can defend this one.
I remember watching this. I remember watching this game because I think Joe Pro was one of the first slots we had, wasn't he? I think he was on the first day. Yeah, and I don't know. This maybe it's just because I watched that much afterwards, but this has all just been washed away for me. I've got nothing.
It really didn't stand that much. I watched most of it. It wasn't terribly great. There was just nothing that great about it. So I think it's earned its place over in poor. If it was terrible, I think we'd find it more memorable in a way.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll say about it, and it's not really a good or a bad thing, is that the whole game took place in a pretty small area, which, on one hand it's less interesting, but on the other hand it's harder to get, horribly lost.
Yeah, this is something that Marvin brought up in his run, that he rather liked being in a fairly confined area, because some of the Nancy Drew games expand out a lot in terms of the surface area that you have to cover, and then that can make it real tedious, really tedious when you have to go back and forth and comb over everywhere. Whereas I think a confined area actually lends itself well to it. It's like when you do an escape room, right? You have a finite area to work with. It's not like you're in a giant field having to escape that. I think it's a positive note on it.
Well, now I need to know if there's any Nancy Drew themed escape rooms.
Oh, well, careful now. We'll bring in the sassy detectives. They'll put us in our place.
Another thing I will say about it is that I think this may have been where the moon logic started to kind of really evolve. We obviously see a lot of moon logic in the later games, but there are a few cracks in this one where it's well, really? Can I really not just ask this guy for the key that he has that I need? Stuff
for
like
me,
that.
That's what's interesting about Nancy Drew games. It's when the more contrived they are, the weirder the people are in there. Like gremlin people who couldn't possibly exist in the real world. Just the more strange and bizarre they are. That's what makes them interesting to me, I think.
I do think that makes it more interesting. Maybe they're borrowing more from adventure games as they went on.
Yeah, I think the earlier ones are a little bit more conventional.
Okay, I want to get moving along here, since we do have 33 of these games to cover, to the 2002 release of Secret of the Scarlet Hand. In this fairly memorable one, in my view, Nancy is an intern as a curator at a Mayan museum. She interns a lot. She's got a lot of I don't know, influence in the world that she can get that interning everywhere that she wants. This one was run by our esteemed Dane the Monk. Is he? He is around. Excellent. All right, welcome the Monk. We've just come over to start talking about the Secret of the Scarlet Hand.
Glad to be here.
I'll let you give us your impressions of the game first.
Overall positive, I would say. I did have my issues with them. I think, in particular, a lot of the puzzles at the end of the game were kind of brute forcey and didn't make much sense. But it had a really, really strong aesthetic, really localized in this small town museum. And that, I think, sold it a lot.
I'm not sure if the brute force nature of the puzzle weighs against the game or of your run of it, which was special in a lot of ways. But I will agree on the strong theme and aesthetic to the game. I really quite liked that part of it. I found it to be the first Nancy Drew game that was really visually stimulating, and it even had good ambient music and sound effects. The rocky things felt rocky, the garden felt like you were walking around in a garden for hours on end.
I also think it made really good use of what few characters it had. It ran into some issues in that it was relatively easy to figure out who the villain was after a point, and Nancy still needed another hour to figure it out herself.
There is that. But
you didn't run back and forth between everyone the same way you do in some other games.
Yeah, it
And
did
also
have downsides to that. I mean, I thought the dialogue was pretty terrible, but one thing that really got me was you had that amnesia-ridden guy, and you just rub every clue against his face until you get your progression, and I thought that dragged the game down a bit.
I kind of hated the characters on a personal level because they were just so wordy and annoying.
I do think that that kind of worked against it. The time mechanic obviously worked against it. I don't think it ever added anything to the game whatsoever.
We're going to be hard-pressed to find games where we thought the time mechanic was a good addition to it. But it seems that we have a lot of things to say, both good and bad, about Secret of the Scarlet Hand. And personally, fight me if you must on this one, but I think it ranks up on good for being the first really evocative Nancy Drew game out there.
It might be Stockholm Syndrome talking, but I would put it on great.
Wow.
You know,
I'm not sure if we have it in us to put this one up on great. We did have plenty of downsides for it. But I'd say your run of it was pretty great. How do you think you ranked up against other runners when it came to the marathon?
It was memorable.
It was.
Do you feel like you've evolved as a person thanks to Nancy Drew's influence in your life?
No, but seeing you that frustrated did bring
You have no idea. You have no idea. Okay, before I get second-hand frustration from that, we should move along to the next one. Worth noting that this game, however, was Tier 1 on Sassy's list. All right, thanks the Monk. We're going to head on over.
You know what's interesting about that one, actually? There was a review of this in the New York Times, and he said that after 3 first-rate games, her interactive has stumbled, producing a game that is more concerned with trivia than puzzles. And to be honest, that makes me think, imagine working for the New York Times, like a prestigious newspaper, and it's your job to review Nancy Drew games.
Oh no!
And not only that, you get your review so wrong. Like we think this one's good. Sassy thinks it's good. I'm sure the audience thought this one was very memorable. And New York Times has fallen from graces in my view.
We're calling out the New York Times on the screen. We're calling you out.
See, we're the big name in Nancy Drew reviewing now, so we can put them in their place. Right, let's head on to the other release for 2002, number 7, Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. This one was ran by Dr. Marsange, and it looks like we have him, so let's bring him on in. All right, welcome, Doctor. We're here talking about Ghost Dogs. Now, in this game, Nancy was staying at some remote cabin, but some ghostly dogs spooked her friend away, and ever the cynical girl, she's down to get to the bottom of the mystery. Tell us a bit about your experience with the game, both how you ran it and how you thought the game compared to other Nancy Drews.
Well, I thought my run was very enjoyable, but too easy. That's mainly my concern with the game. Is I didn't feel challenged at any point by the puzzles. There is one, the season 1, where I got it massively wrong, but even then, it only cost me like 10 minutes total on the run. So I think when it comes to other Nancy Drew games, this one has the least amount of frustration, but difficulty as well. I wanted something a bit harder.
Okay, so you would have been happier with, I don't know, maybe something like the Dangerous Device, or something with a bit more meat and bones to it. But
yeah, probably,
you also said that overall it was a positive experience for you.
Oh, I loved it. I actually really enjoyed the experience.
Mm-hmm. I had some observations of my own, which was I thought the game itself was quite charming and atmospheric. Like you really felt almost alone out in the woods. The very few people that you meet there are all suspicious in their own way. You don't really know who's doing what, and that does make you feel a bit isolated there.
I agree. And the fact that they are all suspicious and very weird people make it even more intriguing.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering these are detective games, so I think that's worth good marks on that front.
I think the best hallmark of this game is the vote of people voting on who the culprit was 33% for each of the 3 characters.
Well, we don't want to spoil it for people watching now, but this does make it look pretty good. I want to throw some downsides personally. In this one, you're not really solving puzzles. You're an errand girl. You're finding bugs. You're finding birds. You're shopping for that grumpy watching guy.
That's bad. The bug section was probably the worst part of it.
It looks pretty bad.
I don't understand.
That's
it's not very fun.
This game in particular is noted as being particularly easy. Like, because I actually wanted to stream this one originally because I saw the title and I thought that it sounds like the name of like a David Bowie song or something. It's just an incredible title for a game, The Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake. So I looked up reviews and like most of the reviews I saw just saying that this one's like one of the easiest ones. So I don't know if you think that's fair or not, but
I think that's very fair. I think that's very fair. It is one of the easiest.
I actually didn't like the soundscape very much. I found it was too busy.
Really? Because I actually thought that the atmosphere, including the sound, was actually one of the high points of Ghost Dogs here.
I mean, you can tell they tried to make you really feel like you were out in the forest or whatever, but it just seemed like they did it was too heavy-handed to me.
Yeah, I tend to disagree with you. I liked the sound design. I felt it was very fitting, especially with the guy watching the birds, and then you hear all the birds in the morning and at night, which make you feel, oh, that's why it's here. There are actually a lot of birds here, and the music as well, especially the night music, the smooth noir jazz music was great in my opinion.
I want to chime in and say that Sassy rated this as tier 2, and I'm actually willing to agree there. I would put this up as good. It was about as good as Scarlet Hand, but in different ways. A lot easier, similar in the atmosphere, but I just found it charming. So I'm willing to slate it up there. It's certainly better than Secrets Can Kill and Haunted Mansion, but I wouldn't put it up with the greats.
I tend to agree. I think this is where the series is really starting to find its feet. We're starting to see more of things that we would call traditional puzzles and less of just figuring out what to do next.
Yeah, I think all the puzzles in the game were very fair, but not enough of them and not hard enough would be my main criticism on the puzzle part.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing a return of the Doctor when he comes and tackles some of the harder Nancy Drew games, assuming that you didn't watch them all and know all the puzzles now.
I have not, and I'm actually thinking of streaming some more, so this will come.
And that's a promise to everyone right there. All right, thanks, Doctor.
Exactly.
We have to move along to the next one, but
All right,
pleasure having you. Oh man, I do like extorting words from people like that. Okay, we're going to move along to the 8th entry. This is the Haunted Carousel. Now, I find it really funny that Fanofgaming, you just said that this is where you think Her Interactive started finding their feet, because the next few games, well, we'll see. So in this one, there's suspicious activity at an amusement park, and Nancy's investigating it. If there was more to the plot than that, it certainly was lost on me. This was ran by our very own Avenue philanthropist, and
he's in the chat, I think.
Yeah, we have
he is
him.
in the chat. Well, let's bring him on in. Avenue, welcome. It's time for the Haunted Carousel. Please, if you can, tell us about your experience with the game.
My experience was rather miserable, although I have to say that the misery was mostly self-inflicted. I needlessly sequence broke the game. The moon logic wasn't really there. The puzzles were fine. It's just that the triggers were mostly dialogue driven, and when my game crashed, I really didn't feel like going through all the dialogue again. So I just put in all the solutions that I already knew, and the triggers completely backed out on me. Towards the end of the run, I walked into Harlan's room, and he said, "Oh yeah, here's the key. By the way, don't go into..." I don't even remember what he said. The moment I stepped out of his office, he called me through the megaphone again and said something else. The triggers completely failed at that point. However, as I said, it was mostly my own fault, and whatever enjoyment I could have had out of this game was...
I mean, I think squeezing enjoyment out of this game's a tough one. I like to try and bring up the good and the bad, but you kind of summed it up by saying it was a miserable experience from the get-go there. I thought that all the characters were really forgettable. I mean, you had that guy that was slacking off, you had the ex-criminal guy. The mini-games were god-awful. You kept having to do these mini-games in the fun park, which, does not deserve the word fun there.
There wasn't any mandatory time management stuff or money management, so it wasn't really that bad. I wouldn't say it was like terrible.
Okay,
terrible.
so the runner himself is putting up the shield saying it wasn't terrible. Helden, you tend to be our measuring stick for terrible. Are you thinking it's terrible enough to make it there, or is it simply poor?
Yeah, I'd say it's terrible enough. I can't remember any of the characters, and this is one of the most recent ones that I watched. But just the triggers were so bad.
It's a bit like a weird fever dream. I think it was terrible.
The triggers were, like you say, you can break it so easily.
I'm gonna have to side with Avenue on this one and say it's not quite terrible. It doesn't really have the hallmarks that we're gonna find for the really terrible stuff later on. And I want to bring special highlight to the fatal end of Nancy falling off a carousel. That
Yeah, I was gonna mention that.
That elevates the game just enough.
This game also had one of the wackiest ending sequences in the entire franchise. If you guys haven't watched the last 5 minutes, you really have to.
I don't think it has the wackiest. I think
there's a lot of whack going on.
Yeah.
In Nancy Drew. Okay, so let's say it was a miserable experience, but the misery has only just begun when it comes to some of these games. So thanks for the input there, Avenue. We're going to trot off to the next one.
Is that like the sign above the gates of hell? Abandon all ye hope who enter here.
Listen, we're going to find that there are great and even outstanding Nancy Drew games by the end of this tier listing, so hold on to some of that hope. But maybe not for the next game that we're covering, which is the 9th one coming out, 2003, Danger on Deception Island. Jingo was our runner, and we do have Jingo. Welcome aboard, Jingo. You ran Danger on Deception Island, a game in which Nancy rides around in a dolphin-infested coastline on her bicycle and learns important bicycling safety lessons. Do you want to tell us a bit about your run with it, and maybe a word or two about the game, and maybe keep it spoiler-free?
Spoiler-free. Oh, man. I did not enjoy it that much. I thought it wasn't good. I actually wrote down my thoughts in the general chat a while ago, so I can just read off that if you want.
Go for it.
My game better not rate higher than poor. Barely had puzzles. I spent most of the time either doing inane tasks or figuring out what trigger I needed or where I needed to go for the third time to get the next inane task. The atmosphere was dreary. The characters weren't fun. The only thing the game did well was replicate how horrible it is to live in San Francisco, but the only good thing you can say about the location was the clam chowder was great.
Okay. That matches up with my own notes quite well, but you missed something very important, which was the audio balancing of the game. When the game would just suddenly start screaming at you, especially with that old seaman bastard. Like, what's... You're going along as normal and suddenly the game's screaming.
Yeah, like, you go and see him, and then you ride back up to the lighthouse for the third time. And then suddenly he's there and just blast your eardrums. Like, oh, God.
But I always try to see the good in these games. Do you think that your sandwich-making skills have improved from playing this game?
Oh, definitely. I now know just the right amount of bad sandwich that can pass safety measures. Through my testing in my run. So we got anchovies, hot sauce, chocolate, and ice cream. Yum, apparently. So definitely improved my sandwich making there.
I think you might have a future as a line cook here.
Yeah.
You give Dennis Wolf a run for his money then. Okay, I'm thinking this is our first entry into terrible. There's really no redemption for this game. It was just god awful, really.
The New York Times premier Nancy Drew reviewer also didn't enjoy this game.
Okay.
Now, I will say, I think this game has my favorite ending sequence because of how just awful it is.
Say good night, Nancy.
Nuts.
Oh man, it was so bad. I will state one thing though. Actually, I'll go with two things. Firstly, I actually got this recommended to play from a girlfriend. So
is she still your girlfriend, or has this been the
yeah, no,
straw that broke the camel's back?
And I actually looked at like the Nancy Reddit a little, and there were people there who were really pushing for the vote for Holt as like a meme. So at the very least, I think there is a lot of people who did enjoy this game purely for that sailor guy and nothing else.
Well, it just goes to show a lot of people can be wrong. All right, thanks for talking us through the disaster that was Deception Island, and we're going to trot off to the 10th one, Shadow Ranch. Right, so in this one, Nancy is stuck in Arizona of all places, and there's a sheet white horse causing a whole load of ruckus. This one, it was a pretty infamous run in my opinion. We had Jagger 911 and JoePro run it. Do we have either of them around?
Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't look. Oh, great. We can badmouth it all we want then. I've been doing a lot of talking. Anybody else want to take it away with how bad this one was?
I mean, I don't really think you need to say that much more to start, other than Jagger just got bored with it. That tells you a lot about the game, doesn't it?
Very boring game. Lots of menial tasks.
Quit.
I think this is the longest run out of everyone's as well. Of the entire marathon, I think this is the longest by about an hour, I think.
It ended up being, I think, 16 hours between the two streamers.
Good grief.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that's because anything of it was just particularly challenging. It was just really asinine. Off the top of my head, you had the stick collecting, so essentially pixel hunting there. There was all the cooking. Okay, it was amusing that you could burn down the whole ranch. I do appreciate that fatal end in it. But you had to feed the horses, saddle the horses, go through that bloody maze. And during it all, I think this game had perhaps the top 3 most soul-sucking music out of all of the Nancy Drew games. There's stiff competition for awful music, and this one took it all.
We haven't really talked about the music in any of the other ones, have we, actually?
No, I don't think so.
I think it's been largely forgettable for most of them so far, but this one stuck in my head as just being god-awful.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I am remembering it just, like, kind of really grating at your consciousness as you're listening to it.
And there was a lot of listening to it. I'm open to any suggestions for it not being in terrible, but going once, going twice.
I feel like for Jagger's sake, it has to be in terrible.
Yeah, in memory of poor Jagger. Dearly departed Jagger, we'll put it there in terrible for him.
I think the only redeeming quality for it is just how over the top the fatal errors were whenever you messed the chores up. Like, the best one for me was the garden, like the fruit picking chore, where you'd bring it back and you'd pick like one that wasn't ripe, and the guy would just be like, "Oh no!" And then we'd send you home.
There were so many, like when saddling the horses or getting the horse feed and things like that. That just seems soul crushing. Just over and over
happen
again
and again.
Yeah.
And was this the first one that really had you do some proper cooking?
I think so.
Because there ended up being a lot more cooking down the line, and if anything, it deserves to be in terrible for pioneering that, because it never really got any better.
There was like sandwich making in the previous game, but it definitely wasn't to this level.
Yeah. Only other thing I want to point out is that the sassy detectives disagree with us massively. They put this one in tier 2, and I am baffled at how it rates so highly.
I think this one was like the first major divergence we had from Sassy Detective, because they put it in tier 2, and I think everyone was agreed it was pretty awful. And they had the playtime down for like 3 hours and 2 minutes. And I've seen many rants from Jagger that time is just not possible.
Are we sure that the Sassy Detective actually exists? Perhaps like some intrepid Jake chat viewer has created a fake website just to...
Oh, what? They knew this marathon was coming and they made the greatest troll website.
They set it up in advance.
Oh, I have one more thing to add on this one. A lot of the games kind of kick off with like a really good inciting incident, like a crime happening or whatever. what happened in this game? It feels like nothing happened.
Well, Nancy was going to be going on a lovely holiday with their friends Bess and George, but Bess and George, and you get this throughout the entire game, just keep phoning you telling the elaborate ways in which their flights get delayed and rerouted. It's just this ongoing joke, so, oh yeah, well, we're not rating these by the hot Bess lower, but at least you had a lot of phone calls with her on this one. Okay, let's try to get away from that god-awful one and move on to The Curse of Blackmore Manor, 2004 PC release, the 11th in the series, and it was ran by Zakamakura, who we do have around. Let's bring him in.
Get him in here.
Welcome aboard, Zaku. We're here to talk about The Curse of Blackmore Manor, hopefully spoiler-free. Please tell us a bit about your experience with the game and how you think it rates against the other Nancy Drews.
Well, can you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I thought it was one of the best, if not the best, Nancy Drew game from those I saw, at least. I didn't view that many.
What? Sorry, I didn't mean to say that out loud, but do elaborate.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean, you mentioned a few things that were generally bad throughout all the games, like voice acting, moon logic, and all that. And Blackmore Manor didn't really have that. It had really good voice acting, in my opinion, or pretty good. And yeah, the puzzles were not. I'm just bad at puzzles. They were not unsolvable or like completely out of the blue or not understandable. So I really enjoyed myself.
Now hold on, I think we have an intervention here. Pepper wants to weigh in. Pepper, am I right in thinking that you have some dissenting opinions on this?
Yeah, I do disagree a lot here.
Well,
can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Sorry, I wasn't sure. So it was pretty disappointing to me. I expected it to be spooky. I expected a bit more interesting scene in general. I can agree that the puzzles weren't terrible. I was just having a little case of DDR blindness, and of course I was also playing it in the middle of the night. I will always claim that excuse. Yeah, but in general it was disappointing to me. The ending was very flat, and
Okay.
what also a little thing that is very annoying after you unlock these secret rooms in the manor, you still have to run back and forth many times and still solve this one puzzle with the secret door. That is very annoying and tedious, and yeah, that didn't have to be in the game.
Okay, I realized that I didn't actually go over the general plot in this one, but Nancy's just stuck in a large manor, and there's this woman who's slowly turning into a werewolf. If there was more to it than that, then it went over my head.
Yeah, again, she's just visiting an old friend, and friend is laying in bed all the time. We never see her. I expected some twist there to that she doesn't, or at least the person isn't really there. Someone's impersonating her. But we find out nothing about it.
We've talked in very general terms here, but I want to pick out some specifics about the game. On negatives, I like to think the animation was getting a bit better in the games, but here we have this creepy little spindly-limbed child who we had to play all the games with. That I thought was a pretty horrible aspect.
So bad.
This one had that man-eating plant that, maybe this is the part where the games start going off the rails a bit. The bloody ghost hunt.
Stress reliever in the darker parts of the run.
The ghost hunt.
I could just go to the plant and get eaten.
Yeah.
It helped.
On the plus side, it had a lot of puzzles. I thought this one was fairly puzzle heavy, although I don't count playing games with that bloody kid as a puzzle. But all right.
Yeah,
so
you mentioned the ghost hunt.
Things that I hate, but I think overall it was actually pretty okay.
So talk it out. How are we feeling it places on the tier list? We have quite a few games here now. So if you say, for example, it's poor, you're saying it's worse than Secrets Can Kill or better than Deception Island. So where would you say it's placing?
I'm putting it pretty much in the middle. I think it's so-so. I think my biggest problem with it is that it starts a trend of the Nancy Drew games not sufficiently explaining the supernatural stuff that they throw in. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say that the secret behind the mystery is not exciting.
Yeah, I was going to say it is explained, but yeah, the explanation leaves a lot to be desired for this one.
Falls flat a lot.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I don't know. Like I said, I was disappointed by it. For me, it would rather go in the poor section, but being more bit more objective, I can see it in the so-so category.
Okay, well, see, we're all growing as people, right? Pepper came in armed to the teeth, ready to lambaste this game, but after talking it through, you know, it's not as bad as the bloody Carousel or the Royal Tower. I can see.
Well, yeah,
it
but
going
that's
into,
very easy.
I can see it going in the so-so here. Production quality wasn't too bad for it. There were lots of puzzles to kind of offset the scary child and the ghost hunt and things like that. So I think we can be satisfied with a so-so measure on this one. And it was also one of the runs where we had two different runners tackle it. Congratulations, Zaku, for being the one to bring it over the finish line, though.
Yeah, Zaku, you did a really good job.
Hours.
All right, cheers, guys. We're going to move on to the next one now.
Right, see you.
Cheerio.
And what a one it is.
The Secret of the Old Clock is up next. Now, I watched through this and I still didn't quite understand what the secret was, but for this one, Nancy is actually teleported back to the 1930s, and she's looking into the theft of some jewelry here. This was run by It's a Shill, who is not in to defend or lambast their own game here. Anyone got strong opinions that they want to fire away at for this one?
It's pretty brave of them to send Nancy Drew back in time, I'll say that much.
Yeah, I don't get why that happened. It's a real outlier.
I imagine they just wanted to have a game in a different time setting. You know, it's not like she fell into some teleporting toilet or something. It's Nancy Drew and it's 1930.
It kind of throws a wrench in the canon that they'd been building up to this point, though.
The canon of this permanently 18-year-old girl that's flown around all the world doing 20 different internships. We've got to buck the lore somewhere.
It's just kind of strange.
If I remember rightly, isn't this game based on the first Nancy Drew story that was written?
Whoa! Somebody went a bit further into the research than I was bargaining for on this one.
I think that's why. I think they just ran out of ideas, and they were like, "Oh, wouldn't it be a good idea if we went back to the start of the Nancy Drew franchise?"
Okay, we're getting confirmation in chat that it is indeed based on the 1930 book.
So you're saying that they ran out of ideas of things to base Nancy Drew games on, but then they kept making Nancy Drew games after the fact.
Yeah, they managed to make another 17 or more.
Well, maybe they were just like, "Oh well, let's just do the." I don't know.
Look, we all have moments where we just, we run out of ideas and just grab onto the first thing. But
it didn't just come out of nowhere. It is an established thing. I don't know why they did it here in the middle of the franchise.
The setting of the game aside, let's kind of tear apart the game itself here. It was relatively puzzle heavy in my view.
Well, I wrote down a note here. I wrote down the game can basically be summed up with fetch quests and mini golf.
Oh, now that's not fair.
No,
I'm gonna have to fight you on that one. Yeah, there was some mini golf. There was some golfing related stuff. There was Golf Ball Mastermind that I thought was a nice tie-in for the. Well, I don't want to call it golfing theme. Just I don't know why there was so much golf going on there. There was some decent light puzzles. I actually quite liked the wee psychic test you had to do with the guy, although it did kind of spell out the solution. I'm giving it a strong plus because of the setting, right? I think it takes quite a bit of gall to turn back the clock like that, but they did a decent job of it.
I do tend to agree.
Detractors on it, I'd say that the animation really regressed on this one.
I don't know what happened. It's like they went back in time and decided they needed to bring the graphics back too.
There's also the characters I thought were just bloody terrible in this one. But
I did love the cat.
Was this the first one where you actually had the top-down driving around to different locations? I think it was. All the other ones have been point and click to go places.
So this had prototype Grand Theft Auto driving that would come back later.
There we go. Nancy Drew ahead of the curve on GTA. Okay, how are we feeling about this one on the tier list then? I'm giving it a lot of strong pluses for the setting and the actual existence of puzzles. But anyone else to weigh in on that?
No, not really.
You got it.
No, yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
The pluses outweigh the negatives for me. I'd call it good.
Yeah, I'm willing to call it good as well. I didn't actually expect it to be good when I saw the intro for it, but there you have it.
Just as a final note as well, I've just looked it up. The reason this game exists at this spot in the series is because it was released for the 75th anniversary of the Nancy Drew series, like, launching, basically.
Oh, there we go. We're stumbling upon all the hot lore for Nancy Drew here and now.
Oh, one more thing. I think this is the game that revealed to me that Bess and George are actually cousins.
What?
Yeah, it's the deep Nancy lore. You call them and they're playing Go Fish together, and one of them calls the other one cousin.
I don't know. Might be a bit of bait and switch.
No, I can confirm from Wikipedia.
Oh, no.
The free online encyclopedia. Yeah, it's true. Apparently Bess Marvin and George, they're cousins.
Who hangs out with a cousin that much? Okay, maybe I don't want to Maybe I don't want to go down this avenue. Let's move swiftly on to the next game. It's the 13th, it's Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon, released 2005, and this one was ran by one of our resident Dutchmen, one of the many ones, Spam Buka, and Nancy's on a train with other detective people, and that's the long and short of it. Spam ran this, is he around? He is indeed around.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
Welcome aboard, Spam. We're just starting to talk about Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon. Tell us about your experience with the game and how you think it rates against the other Nancy Drews.
Evening, guys. Yeah, well, actually, it was most of a blur. As you know, I was mostly drinking while playing the game. Honestly, I think it went pretty well, and the game was pretty tolerable as well. I think it's mostly about the mindset in which you enter the game. If you say, oh, this is going to suck, or I know it's going to suck, sure, the game will suck for you. But if you just stay calm, have fun while playing it, I think it's honestly not that bad. But I think that's the rule for most games that were played.
Yeah, you certainly did look like you were having a lot of fun. I mean, you were drinking a lot of apple juice as you went along, and we were joking about everything flooding around you, but you made good progress throughout the game. We didn't really get hung up at any particular point. I mean, a few puzzles here and there, but they didn't take more than like 10 minutes to plow through.
There was one point, there was the puzzle with the dolls that took me more than an hour, and I think it's mostly because I didn't find one particular piece of paper I needed to finish the puzzle, but apart from that, yeah, it went pretty swimmingly.
Yeah, typical hallmark of a Nancy Drew game right there, trying to find a piece of paper.
I think you were the only runner who had a full body camera, so we could really see your body language. I know Max had the face cam, but like it was really fun to watch you kind of pull out your notebook and slump down when you got stuck. It was really good.
I'm not sure I slumped down. You probably saw it better than I did. But I mean, as far as I know, I was just enjoying it and thinking what I had to do, which became a nice little meme as well. But that is exactly the point. So
some specifics in the game. In this one, Frank and Joe Hardy make a physical appearance in the game, which is kind of cool. They're talked about a lot, and the Hardy boys come up a lot in Nancy Drew. But it was kind of heartwarming to actually meet them there. There was fairly high puzzle density, which I always rate pretty as a pretty good thing in these games. But a detractor, and maybe you'll agree with me on this one, Spam, cooking minigame.
Yes, a recurring thing for the game, I suppose. Yeah, well, I mean, it was tolerable once you figure out what to do.
Yeah, what you have to do is put like melon slices and bologna into sandwiches.
Oh yeah, I was raging about that actually. People putting pineapple on burgers and stuff like that. Ew. Or actually, you could throw in more horrible stuff like peanut butter and what was that? Sardines or something. Who the fuck puts that stuff on a burger?
I forget. Was the cooking minigame, was it necessary? Did you have to do it again and again, or was it a one-off thing?
I think it was a one-off thing. At the start, I might have not put in the bacon, or I did it twice, but after that, it went pretty easy.
Cooking minigames are usually a detractor, but if you only have to do it once and can move on, it's fine. If it's like certain other games where you just keep having to come back to it, then I think it really starts to chip away at it. So how do you feel it would rate on the list here then, Spam? You said tolerable, but you know, tolerable as a game or tolerable as a Nancy Drew game?
Tolerable as a game, honestly, which probably puts the game pretty high, but again, the experience might vary completely if I got stuck for 5 hours or something like that. I think most people that play that game probably rate the game on how much difficulty they had with the game. So yeah, I'm obviously very biased to it, but yeah, I liked it. I mean, the characters sucked, but you know that.
I don't know. The detective was kind of cool.
Honestly, I mean, the entire terrain was full with fraud. Even the Hardy Boys didn't do anything useful except cook stuff. So
that's true.
So yeah, especially that wannabe detective. I mean, they didn't anger me or something, but I did say, "Oh crap, it's one of those types again."
Well, help me out, other guys. We've been through 12 of these so far. Where do people think this one deserves to be on the list?
I think that it's easy to color your expectations for how good this game was by how well the run went and how entertaining Spam was. I think it was a fairly average Nancy Drew game.
I'd put it in. I don't know. I agree with Spam. I think it was quite good. I think it was very well contained. I thought the whole train thing lent itself well to the Nancy Drew game. Being able to go on train cars and stuff.
Yeah, I also want to put another positive in that the ending sequence I thought was pretty well done. Don't want to spoil what happened there, but it kind of took me back to like Resident Evil 4 riding on the minecart thing. I thought it looked and felt pretty good, and I think Spam lucked his way through getting it right quite quickly. I'm willing to put this one up in good even. I actually think as Nancy Drew games go, it was pretty good.
Yeah, the story might be a little more silly than I honestly thought. I mean, if the entire thing was just about a letter about the president, I mean, I know Americans get crazy about old stuff with their own presidents, but honestly, that's I can't imagine it being millions of dollars of value. But that's just me.
Okay. All right. Well, we have to go full steam ahead here. So thanks a lot, Spam, both for being one of the runners and for giving us some insights into Blue Moon Canyon.
Sure. See ya.
See ya. Righto, man. We are now 14 deep. It's time flying here, and what a game we have to cover now. Danger by Design. So, in this game, ran by the resident Brazilian Brelix, Nancy is in France interning, again, as an assistant for an insufferable fashion designer. There's a lot of things I can say, but I'll leave the floor to someone else to talk about this one.
How about Brelix? He's in the chat.
Oh yeah, well there's an idea. Okay. Right, welcome Brelix. It's time. The floor is open to you. Tell us about Danger by Design.
Danger by Design is a bad game. That's the truth. It's a bad game. It is so bad. You're basically the intern of Minette, and you don't want to be the intern of Minette because she's crazy, and you have to do crazy stuff for her. You have to go and buy stuff, and you use your own money, and then you have to paint. And you have to, god damn, the painting minigame is terrible.
You have to catch cockroaches for her.
I mean, if there's two things that I learned from this game. Is that France has terrible people, and those terrible people are named Minette and JJ. And the other thing is that crime actually gives you money because you paint you paint Mona Lisa and you gain money. It's terrible, but you gain money.
I think it was one of the best money-making mini-games in the whole franchise.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I'd rather learn Icelandic.
Always.
Yeah, so a lot of... Come to think of it, was this the first game that actually had you doing menial tasks for money in a Nancy Drew game? That came up a lot, but since we didn't play these chronologically, it's hard to think which one did it first. I think it might be this one.
I think it was this one, yeah.
So, in a way, it trailblazed a system that stood the test of time, so it's got to earn some points for that, even if it was painting bootleg Mona Lisa.
Yeah, like what I was thinking is this. The bad stuff, like, there's a lot of bad stuff, but there's also a lot of good stuff, you know?
Please tell us.
The music, I mean, the music is good, for instance. I actually enjoy the music. The park had some ambience, so when we were painting the goddamn Mona Lisa for the 15th time, you at least was listening to pigeons and stuff like that, you know? It was okay. The puzzles, while there were some bad puzzles, there were some good ones, like the hangman puzzle. That was really good. That was one of the best puzzles in the franchise, in my opinion. And let's not forget the ending. The ending was amazing. I really want to talk about it, but it would be just 100% spoilers. But the ending is just amazing. After such a terrible game, you have that ending. It's amazing.
Yeah, the ending is great. You thought you'd seen it all, and then Nancy crosses like Street Fighter with a detective game. So it was something else. So yeah, there was lots of bad things. We did we mention the tea yet? The tea making was something else. There was lots of moon logic. That the screaming ornament in the park.
You know what? I wanna say that
let's not forget the squirrel.
I want to say that this game's actually outstanding. It's by far the best Nancy Drew game that was ever made.
Okay.
As a piece of social commentary, it's incredible. I mean, you've got Nancy Drew, who's a very intelligent girl, working for the worst person in the world for no money. I mean, what sums up being an intern better than that, right?
Oh wow! Oh man, I think there's a future for you for the New York Times there.
This game also featured Racketeer level haggling, which was excellent.
Yeah, I pay you €1.
The haggling was fun.
There's like obscene statues, which basically sums up France. I mean, I don't know, like or Paris. It's just it's a complete fever dream game. It's something, you know. It is a fever dream. That's what I love about it so much. That it's so bizarre, right? I don't think any other game comes as close to being as weird as this one, and I just like that quite a lot, actually.
For tier listing this game, we have to divorce Brelix's run from the game itself. That'll be difficult because they're kind of one and the same. But looking at our list here, we're trying to make the definitive tier list for all of the games. Now, this game, it's certainly memorable, and it's not without its upsides. But just how heavy are those downsides? How many bootleg Mona Lisas?
It's hard.
I was thinking that.
It's hard to divorce the. Sorry. It's hard to divorce the hateable characters from the quality of the game, but I'm gonna argue that this is actually a great game.
Oh.
I disagree.
You
agree, man.
Well,
the game, I would say it's so-so, you know?
So
I know it's weird, but the thing is, the game has so many bads, and the bads are so bad, but the good that there is in the game is also so good. And like Urisa said, I agree with parts of what Urisa said, other parts make me mad. Because
let me just put it like this. Let me just put it like this.
So-so are good, but good.
If they made a documentary about the production of this game, it would be one of the most interesting documentaries ever made. How do these people come to the decisions to do like all these different things that are in the game? What process created this game? How did it come to exist?
I have to fight this, right? Imagine like it's 5 years down the line, you're some 12-year-old girl, and you're like, I wonder which Nancy Drew game I want to play. I'll check this tier list. And you find Danger by Design as great or even good, and you're like, oh, I want to play a good game. Are you going to have a good time?
All right.
Then I've learned a very valuable
You're not.
lesson about trusting people on the internet.
So at the end of the day, these are puzzle games, and you know what? Danger by Design has pretty good puzzles.
It's certainly one of the most puzzling games there is.
I don't
I
know.
mean, yeah.
film.
I guess the puzzles aren't so bad. And there are some good ones, but there are others that are pretty bad, like the squirrel one. The squirrel one, I would never, ever find.
Man.
The last puzzle was also really, really hard. Max was all smug about it, but it
Max is
really
smug about
was
everything.
something out of left field. I don't know, man. I'd say so. If you want to say good, okay, but it's
This
like the lowest of the
game,
list.
in my opinion, cannot be middling, right? There's nothing middling about it. It is extreme. It is rude. The question is it extremely good or is it extremely bad? Because there's no way it is in the middle grounds here.
I just remember like finishing work. I could just done my work for the day, and I was like, oh, I'll see if anyone's what the game is in Nancy Drew. So I get on Twitch, I go to the stream, and I see Nancy Drew surrounded by moaning statues. Like, what? How do you even begin to understand or explain that? I don't know. Like,
right. I'm
Make another one instead of outstanding stuff. Make one that is rude and put danger design there. Done.
I'm not in for meme lists here. The game is terrible, right? But there's a massive apostrophe here.
Not
that
terrible.
It's terrible, but in like a culturally enlightening way. It's like the human sacrifices of Nancy Drew, right? It's an important milestone of culture and society, but maybe not one that we want to emulate again.
okay, you know what? I think that's actually kind of fair. I think that's kind of fair. There's an old American movie called Manos: The Hand of Fate. It's a really dreadful movie. It was made by a lawn fertilizer salesman as a bet. He made the movie as a bet, just to say, I bet I can make a movie. It's about 30 minutes long. It's really awful. But it stands out because it's like all the decisions that accumulated in order to make this awful movie. That's just kind of, it's awful. it's a dreadful movie, but it's still great, despite the fact that it's dreadful. Because you just watch it and you're like,
yeah, it is so bad it's good, but it is really bad.
I'm so glad I can listen to Uristocrat in live. It's so good.
Okay, but if nothing else, right, of all the games we've had so far, this has been the most contentious one here, and I think it deserves maybe even some admiration for that. And Brelix, you deserve some admiration as well, because I've never seen somebody so industrially put out forgeries.
Hundreds of euros worth of
And remember, you were being paid, what, like 5 or 15 euros? Someone's paying more than that to buy them off the guy you're painting them for. So
I got one of them for my avatar.
Yeah, I wonder if we could commission someone to actually make a proper one and put it on Etsy or something. Anyway, we're going down a rabbit hole here. We have to move on, but thanks, Brelix, for your input. And let's move on to the 15th Nancy Drew game. Whoa, that was difficult, but those are the hot takes that people are coming here for. Right, number 15, The Creature of Kappu Cave, released in 2006. For this one, Nancy flies out to Hawaii for, you guessed it, yet another internship. But she gets rolled up in all sorts of carries-on with the Hardy Boys and who can forget Big Island Mike. This one was run by Ploppy Plop, who is around. So, by the magic of non-TeamSpeak, we'll bring them in. Ploppy, welcome. Please unmute yourself and tell us about your experience on Kappu Cave and how you think it compares with the other Nancy Drew games.
I think I was pretty bored, honestly.
Nice.
This game came out 3 months after the previous game, so there's speculation on the fan wikis that it was actually done by a skeleton crew that was really rushed, and I think I felt that when playing it, because there was basically very little content in there compared to Danger by Design.
So
We
you
had a
think
couple of easy
that
puzzles.
the A team was put
Yeah,
onto
exactly.
Danger by Design to make the perfect Nancy Drew game, and you got
Yeah.
the leftovers.
Danger by Design was the game that they wanted to make, their ideal Nancy Drew game, and this was sort of the filler. You can't really do a proper Nancy Drew game in 3 months. Even Nancy Drew needs more time than that, I think.
I am kind of baffled by how you choose a setting as beautiful and interesting as Hawaii, but you end up with such a graphically botched experience as this. It was so ugly.
Now I'm gonna have to contest that, especially when you're down by the seafront. I thought it looked quite beautiful. It actually had animated water and pretty
Waves.
lush greenery, which for Nancy Drew, you come away from Danger on Deception Island, you think they're not even capable of doing that, and they were. So for all the other demerits the game had, I would not say that it comes away poorly graphically.
Is this the first one where the Hardy Boys show up, actually?
No, the Hardy Boys showed up on the train, but this one you play as the
yeah.
Hardy Boys.
You play as each Hardy Boy, exactly. First time you can play both Joe and Frank.
I didn't realize there was differences between the Hardy Boys. I assumed they were basically the same.
They just kind of split into two people when they want to, and then morph back into one when it's convenient. How did you find that, playing as different characters? Was it did it put a new spin, or was it just tedium?
It was pretty much meaningless to me. I didn't notice a difference. I wanted to play as Nancy, I think, because it's traditional, it's part of the marathon to have a voice, and I think the Hardy Boys didn't add anything.
Well, is there anything we can say that's good about the game? Because we've been lambasting it quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
It's not
I love
the
Big
last
Island
game.
Mike.
Big Island Mike as a character was he was heartwarming. I quite liked his addition to it.
There was this one moment very early on where he's like, hey, I have the key that you need. Go get me a shell necklace or whatever. And then you go get the shells and you're like, hey, can I keep the necklace? And he says, no, I'm the one who asked you to make it. It's mine.
There's also, you need to progress by giving him a certain kind of ice cream or shaved ice, and he won't tell you what, but he'll eat every cone you give him. Guess that's how he became Big Island Mike. I feel like he was a bit of a redemption arc for the game, but that in itself isn't enough to elevate it.
Yeah, and there was also a lot of tedium with the fishing and shell collecting and all of that. I think that was just padding, but that's common for other games of the time. I think White Wolf will bring up a lot of discussion about tedious menial work.
Oh, I can only hope.
So we can agree it's not a good game, but is it a terrible game?
No, I don't think so. I think it's very mediocre. I think it's almost the definition of mediocre for me.
I'd go with that, but we have to remember Ned does get friend-zoned in this game, right? Yeah. There is this moment where you say, Ned, he's a friend of mine. Poor guy. Poor Ned. And it only gets worse from here on out. I'm with you on the mediocrity here, right? It has its goods, it has quite a lot of bads. Looks alright, the puzzles, they're there, but they're not very good. It is really mediocrity. I wouldn't say it's bad like the Royal Tower or as terrible as Shadow Ranch. So I'm willing to put it up as so-so. Do we have any hot takes or opposition to that?
I think that's a fair judgment.
How does it feel to get like a really mediocre game, Ploppy? Because there are people that have had experiences with like amazing Nancy Drews, and that must feel good. And it also must feel good in a way to get Nancy games that are really awful, but you get stuck in the middle. Did it betray your expectations?
Disappointing. I was actually a little bit disappointed that it was so easy and short, and nothing special about it. I was prepared to be really tortured or to have a really good moment where I solve a difficult puzzle. But there weren't any difficult puzzles.
So do you think you would have preferred having something like Danger by Design?
I would have loved Danger by Design. I think I loved that game, and yeah.
That's pretty big words, man. I think Danger by Design is going to continue to be the hot take here. Worth noting that Sassy put this one as tier 3, so they also didn't think Kappu Cave was that hot. Okay, cheers, Ploppy. We're going to head on to the aforementioned White Wolf of Icicle Creek. Now, funny this one. Well, let's talk about it first. So Nancy, she managed to clear the death road to Canada, and her reward was becoming the only maid at a lodge that's being constantly harassed by Greenpeace arseholes and there's a wolf. That pretty aptly sums up the game. It was run by our very own Death Road to Canada runner, Dennis Wolf, who is now part of the channel. Welcome, Dennis. It's your pride and joy, White Wolf of Icicle Creek. Please tell us about your experience of the game and how you think it rates up against the other Nancy Drews.
It took the words right out of my mouth, because in one word, it's tedious. It felt to me like every single part of the design was to make it as tedious and as long as possible. It's just everything is repetitive and takes way longer than it needs to. It goes, oh, you have this chore, like this cooking mini game. Now do it 3 times per in-game day for however long it takes.
For the benefit of people watching this down the line, could you go into a bit more depth about the tedium in the game? What did you have to do? Why did you have to do it? How often did you have to do it?
So, first of all, there's this time mechanic. So time passes in the game, and then because you're employed as a maid and as a cook, unpaid, as I might add, so it's really not an internship. You have to do cooking 3 times per in-game day. The cooking is a Subway simulator, basically. You have all these complicated orders. You can burn the food if you leave it on the cooker too long, and it just adds nothing. You have to do this for a long time, and then suddenly, without telling you, you don't have to do it anymore.
Not to mention, you could miss it and be forced to do it.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, because like if you miss it early on in the game, you get time skipped to the next cooking. So if you miss lunch, you get skipped to dinner, and then you miss the entire afternoon section where you can actually talk to people, because you can only talk to people in the afternoon, and then you have to do breakfast again as well and lunch the next day.
It also seemed like it was probably the worst cooking minigame in all of the Nancy Drew games.
Oh yeah, there was a lot to remember, a lot to do each time.
I have a lot more respect for Subway employees after this, because it's captured the reality of just working in
but I don't think all the tedium was bad. You could also go and have a snowball fight and pelt this kid with snowballs right in the face.
That was the one redeeming factor, because it was very cathartic to just hit that kid in the face with a snowball.
Can we say a word or two about Fox and Geese?
Fox and Geese, it was again one of these tedium things, because it did this more often, where it had a puzzle and then it just said, okay, now do the puzzle 4 times. It did it with the pyramid puzzle as well, and with the minesweeper I had to do that multiple times, and just Fox and Geese was just the culmination of that, just having to do it 4 times, having to trap the piece in the 4 corners. It was just
based on what we've heard so far, it's a pretty terrible game, but we need to try and go over the redemption. The game looked beautiful, in my opinion. I actually thought the characters were fun. You had the hunting guy, you had the Fredonian skier, you had those Canadian nerds. I thought they were fun to interact with.
I even liked what I call the quirky telephone character. So at one point we had to call the phone some professor whose tool was stolen, some geologist, and even that was fun. Like, I thought the writing was pretty fun. The accents were also very interesting.
Okay, we have to pick up the pace here. So I do want to challenge you on this one, Dennis. Well, where would you put it on the tier listing here?
Honestly, terrible. It is just the story is fun, but it is just so much tedium to do anything.
I
disagree with summary.
I have trouble putting it in terrible, right? If you put it terrible, you say it's as bad as Shadow Ranch, it's as bad as Deception Island, it's worse than Royal Tower, worse than Stay Tuned for Danger. I would have a hard time with that. I actually think there are some really good points to this game, and it's the tedium that brings it down. If you remove the tedium from the game, I'd say this is a great one.
I think the puzzles in this one were, at least in these early games, were some of the best puzzles out of all of them. It's just the fact that you had to do them repeatedly, which made them terrible. But if you remove, I would say like Jay says, I'd say the tedium is the only downside to this game, really.
It's a huge downside, though. The game is hostile to your having fun. Like, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, what I'd say is it goes in great, and then it gets knocked down twice for just based on that tedium, and it has tedium by the buckets.
I can agree with that.
I would still put it in poor because I didn't think the puzzles were even that great, honestly. But I think, I was a runner and I was doing that, I would like to point out, for 11 hours straight.
Yeah, when you got to the fourth round of Fox and Geese and you were about 10 hours in, I think you were kind of brain melting by that point, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, and then I still had to do the wolf maze for a bit, and it was just
Okay, I think a great game, massively pulled down. It deserves to be in poor, all things considered. I could never say that it's worse than Stay Tuned for Danger, but it doesn't look right sitting next to Kappu Cave in Blackmore.
I can agree.
All right. Well, with that thoroughly put in, thanks a lot, Dennis Wolf. It was really cathartic for me for you to have to suffer after everything you did to me on my trip to Canada. So
I did enjoy clipping, and I am glad that I was able to create some clips of my own.
It was great to have you as part of the marathon. All right, cheers and cheerio to you.
Cheers.
Righto, onwards next to one of the really early games run in the marathon, Legend of the Crystal Skull, the 17th Nancy Drew game. So in this one, Nancy has stumbled into a skeleton man, and it prompts her to start searching a large and creepy house for the aforementioned Crystal Skull. This one's run by Mariah Sombra. I never know how to say that, but maybe they can fill us in because they're around. Welcome, it's Crystal Skull time, Sombra. Please fill us in on your experience with the game and how you think it rates against the other Nancy Drews.
Now, so to start off with like the plot without spoiling anything, one of my main issues with the plot is the aforementioned Crystal Skull just doesn't show up until 70%, 80% through the game. Before that, stumbling through a mansion in the dark, I've been told it was better on stream, but for me I was just clicking around black rooms trying to find my way to the next room, and you're collecting glass eyeballs and you've got no clue what they are for or what you're supposed to do with them, so you're just walking around trying to find any puzzle at all. And honestly, there weren't that many puzzles in my game. I felt like there were some clever ones, there was one where there were books arranged in the formation of teeth, and you had to go find a dental chart with someone's dental records and then click the books in that order. That was pretty clever. But overall, there were roughly 12 puzzles in 6 hours of content.
Now, some people had 3 or 4 puzzles in the same amount of time. So let's remember that we're judging this against other Nancy Drew games here.
Well, you didn't seem like you were stuck on any puzzle for longer than 5 or 10 minutes. Did you feel they were easy, or did you just really blitz through them?
I never felt they were to compare it to some other Nancy Drew games, Uristo's Weasel puzzle, right? Where you just have to see.
We will get there.
But yeah, I felt like my puzzles were more of a different kind of puzzle, and for example, there was a puzzle with a spider where you had to it had 7 lines around it, and you had to click them in the correct order, but they made a sound, and I was clicking on them to make tunes, and I accidentally brute forced it.
I will say your game actually felt quite detective-like, and I really enjoyed that, especially when you were going around with the different names.
Yes, I mean that was one of the better parts of the game. What I didn't like about the game was, so the setting is New Orleans, right? But all we saw from New Orleans was a food truck that sells gumbo, which was a nice touch, obviously, and a pawn shop, right? So in part of it, you play as Bass, and you're in New Orleans itself, but at no point do you feel like it's got a New Orleans vibe. The atmosphere just isn't there. Just such a waste of the setting, I feel.
Well, the New Orleans atmosphere isn't there, but overall I think the game is quite atmospheric. The dark, the rain, the nice animations involved. When you were talking to people, like the guy on the laptop, he'd swivel around back and forth, and in previous games everyone was a lot stiffer than that. So I do think it actually felt quite atmospheric, even if it wasn't New Orleans. And
Yeah, the mansion, the mansion part was quite atmospheric. It's just like a waste of New Orleans setting. Like it could have been set in any other location, right?
That's fair.
And you
Yeah.
still could have had the spooky mansion setting.
I do actually live in Louisiana, quite close to New Orleans, and I can definitely see that they tried. The characters were, some of them at least, were very New Orleanian to me, and that was pretty cool. But I can agree with what Jake said about the sound atmosphere in general being very good, if not very New Orleanian.
And we kind of glossed over it, but playable Bess Marvin for the first time, that's got to be a plus.
Oh yeah,
Even if you are just chatting up that guy in the street.
Definitely. It definitely had some of like Bess's best moments, I feel, especially like at the very end where she just charges into like a secret meeting and is like, "Hey guys, what's up?"
Oh, textbook Bess. Alright, so looking at the tier listing here, we have quite a lot of positive things to say about this game. I think it would be a disaster to put it down next to like Icicle Wolf Guy and Stay Tuned for Danger. Where do you feel, Sombra, that it places?
Like as a Nancy Drew game, with the puzzles I was a bit disappointed, but for the overall atmosphere, like you were searching for, at the very end, we were searching for clues on the crystal skull and such, and that was like quite detective-like. I really liked that part. For the game in its entirety, probably so. Like the last part maybe pulls it up to good. That's where I feel it would be.
Any second opinions on that one coming in?
I lean towards good overall, I think.
Yeah, I'd say good as well.
Having seen all of them by now, I do think it was one of the better ones. Like it's head and shoulders above the likes of Secret Can Kill and Haunted Mansion, and by no means does it deserve to be down low below that. But it's we're not quite yet at the great territory. There are great Nancy Drew games, but we just haven't quite gotten to them yet. But we will have to move on. So thank you, Sombra, both for doing the run and for coming in and telling us about your experience with it. And I'm just going to imagine he's saying, "It was a pleasure, Jake. I can't wait till the next Nancy Drew marathon." Bye-bye, Sombra. Righto. Next up, this is a monumental one. 18th game, The Phantom of Venice, 2008. The first game that truly broke a runner. So in this one, Nancy is invited to Venice to help the Italian authorities catch a high-profile bunch of art thieves. That's the main plot of it, but the real meat and potatoes of it is obviously dressing up in a cat costume and adopting your new persona of Punchy LaRue. Derdanlas ran this game. Well, they were the substitute runner of the game. Doesn't look like they're around, but we do have...
No,
they are. Oh boy. We're bringing in Dan Last, but we're also bringing in Serenade of Walters. It took 2 runners to beat this game. Well, you know what? How about we have them give us the insight. Serenade, you were the first one to cross paths with the Phantom of Venice. Maybe tell us a bit about your experience with the game and how you thought it ranked against other Nancy Drews. Well, we can't hear a word out of Serenade, so we might have to turn to Dan Lass then, who did beat it from start to finish. Dan Lass, do you have any insights for us?
Well, looking back, I'm really conflicted. First of all, I overall like the story in it, but the puzzles, I'm really conflicted about the puzzles. Some of them, the thing you have to find out and actually resolve was quite good, I think, but how you solve them was at some points really tedious. Of course, there is a Scopa, which like Scopa alone should make it outstanding, in my opinion.
well, Scopa is its own standalone game, right? If we were judging that, it would be outstanding, but it certainly does elevate the game.
Definitely. The puzzle, there were some great puzzles and there were some bad puzzles.
I might have to probe you a bit on the great puzzles part. Which puzzles made you think, wow, this is a great game I'm playing?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Serenade says his microphone's working now. I don't know if you want to try again.
Okay. Serenade, do we have any luck on hearing from you now?
Okay, I guess not.
Okay, maybe not then. Alright, Danlas, good puzzles in Phantom of Venice. I don't want to seem too hard on this game, but I thought it was bad, so you need to convince me otherwise.
I liked I actually liked the one with the chess things, but it was tedious. So
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey.
There we go. Now we hear Serenade. All right, we'll just hear from Danlas first, and then we'll get your 2 cents in the game.
Okay, sorry.
So I liked the what was it?
The chess puzzle.
One. The chess one. I thought that was fine. For me at least. Also, like the hidden play box and stuff. I like that too. Also, what is it? Compared to what some people said about the last one, I don't think it's bad. It's just at the time when I did it, I probably said it was bad. But looking back, I think it was more.
And that's the key thing, right? The games in general aren't that great, but we're comparing them against each other, not against other video games that are out there. And I imagine you've since seen other runs or other the Nancy Drew games and decided that maybe Phantom of Venice isn't as bad as you thought.
Yeah, I haven't seen much, but I saw some. But so in a comparison,
okay.
I think
well,
so.
let's turn to Serenade then, and maybe hear what your opinion was. Because before Danlas took the game all the way to the end, Serenade gave it a shot, got maybe a third or half the way through, and then dropped it like a hot potato. So, what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, first of all, Danlas did a very good job. So to be fair on him, he did the best of a bad job. I think it's fair to say that. But yeah. I love everything about this game in terms of aesthetic, music, characters, story, location. And I have to say, compared to other games in the series, the progression was too obtuse. I didn't really get stuck in terms of trying to figure out where I needed to go next. The only thing that I didn't like about this game, that I hated, was the content. I just really... It wasn't what I wanted from the game, and that's why I sounded so depressed. But yeah, I mean, what can I say? I don't want to repeat myself because I've said it all before, but I just didn't like the content of the game and the puzzles.
Yeah, I think a lot of people watching thought that it would be for them, but maybe not for you. You were saying, man, I hope there's not a card game, and there was a card game, for example.
I have to say, Scopa is good. Like, I enjoyed Scopa in the end because it's not a puzzle, it's clearly a card game, but I liked it. I thought it was fun, and if the game had good puzzles and then Scopa, I would have been fine. So it wasn't Scopa, it was just everything else.
So when we have the new chat Scopa Championship, you'll be first in line to be joining in. That's what I'm hearing.
Last in line. I'll be last in line, Jake.
Okay. Oh. How about Punchy LaRue? Right, this is the first game that showed us that, unless otherwise specified, Nancy is always going around in a full cat costume, and you get to play some discount DDR there. Do you think is that what the market really wanted out of Phantom of Venice?
I don't care.
Go down last.
I just think it's funny. I love it. I don't care if it's good or bad. It was just funny, and that's all it has to be. For me, at least.
All right, we have to start thinking about how it rates against the other games. I think that there's an overwhelming feeling of God, it was bad, but maybe it's being pulled down undeservedly. You're the two runners. First up, Serenade. Where would you put it on the list?
I think that everything about it, aesthetic, music, all that kind of thing, elevates it. But the content drops it down, so I think it averages out right in the middle.
Okay, and Danlas?
I'd say good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, we need to do some conferring here then. Fanofgaming, any thoughts on that?
Oh, jeez. I mean, I tend to agree with Serenade that, like, as far as overall visual and audio design, it's very appealing, but the puzzles are a bit brutal. I think good is a little bit of a stretch. I would put it so-so.
I am having... I mean, Scopa, yeah, is a great addition, but is it enough to really put it up there with the likes of Blue Moon and Old Clock? Helden, Uristo, help us out here? This is tricky.
I would put it in good, personally. I found all the puzzles I thought were quite good, with the exception of maybe the lockpicking puzzle, which was just easy. Yeah, that's all I can really say about it. Everything else has already been said, but I thought the puzzles were pretty good.
Yeah, I think Helden took the words out of my mouth there.
Alright, well, looks like by popular opinion we're going to put it with good. I mean, I'm thinking more so-so, but then I remembered the mandatory singing canoe segments. And that solidifies it up there in good.
I think more games need those kind of segments, right?
Oh, yeah, and they need to be unskippable. Alright.
So I have to ask, Serenade, is there any chance that the VODs will ever see the light of day?
Well, I've sent stuff to JJ for the highlight reel, so there'll be stuff in the highlight reel as long as JJ puts it in. I've deleted everything else, but it's been recorded locally by another mod, so yeah, it exists.
All right.
You'll find it in the deepest, darkest places on the web, I'm sure. All right, thank you for joining in, Danlas and Serenade.
Cheers, see ya.
Righto. Okay, whew, another contentious one. I think they're getting spicier the more we go along these. So let's come to one that, in my eyes, is incredibly spicy. It's your very own Haunting of Castle Malloy. So, I've been saying the plots to these all along. You're the one that bloody played it. Tell us, what happened? What was the plot of Castle Malloy?
The plot of Castle Malloy, as I understand this, is that Nancy Drew has she's gone to a wedding of somebody. I don't know if she's ever appeared in any other Nancy Drew game or media, so maybe Nancy doesn't really know this woman. She's just turned up anyway. And when you arrive, you find out that her husband has vanished. There's a lot of suspects. It could be the fairies. It could be that he just actually doesn't want to get married. It all takes place in it doesn't take place in Ireland. It takes place in like an American's imagination of what they think Ireland would be like if they ever went there. So yeah, it's just weird. And yeah, like you can try and predict what happened to him. You can try and predict the ending, and you can try and predict literally anything else about the game, because I don't think you'll get the answer correct.
Nobody would get it right. And you know what? These are mystery detective games, and I think a game that can pull the wool over your eyes so effectively deserves merit for it, because there's no living person who could... you could query everyone in the world and nobody would get the twist of Malloy. So,
well, the game had plenty of wool. It had a lot of that at least one stage of the game.
Isn't the fact that nobody would get the twist just because the twist is so out of left field? It's not set up at all.
Oh, no. If you put the pieces together, right, the moment you see Wallace and Gromit's own sheep shearing machine, you'd be able to put two and two together. But
the nightmare sheep contraption. Honest to God, I'm surprised that Peter hasn't burst into this bloody barn and started taking the sheep out of it, because that's definitely animal cruelty.
So I made a lot of notes, and I mean a lot of notes about this game, and every single one of them is a plus for it. So this game contains berating the Irish. I mean, you're not 2 minutes into it and you start throwing stones through this old Irish git's windows. I think it looks fantastic. I thought the mini games were fun. You play the ace detective interactive spot the difference game.
Oh yeah.
You know, how many bars
That was
have
great for
arcades?
Uristocrat.
Hilarious claw game. You know, I don't want to spoil the ending, but you do blow up Big Ben. It was terrific. I thought I am very hard pressed to see anything bad about the game.
I mean, that really does sum it up, doesn't it? The first puzzle that we came across was we arrived outside the castle and we had to throw stones at the window to get inside, and we just smashed the window.
The first time I saw that, I thought that's how you get the first bad ending, but no, you do have to commit petty acts of vandalism on this Irish git's home.
So this was rated as one of the hardest Nancy Drew games, and I think that's immediately obvious looking at almost any puzzle.
Yeah, well, Uristo, you're the one that took on the puzzles. How did you feel they were?
The game didn't always do a good job of explaining things. Like the thing that I think exemplifies that best is literally one of the first things when you got to mix those drinks. The reason that was so difficult was because like up until now I'd seen everybody like do the puzzle games, and often people would have like a written version of what he said, you know, so you could kind of work out what he actually meant. But the guy talked so fast, I was just like, oh, I'll read back, see what he said, and figure it out that way. No, none of it's there, and you only got to hear it once as well. You know, you couldn't have him explain to you what he said. It was a one-time only thing, and then you just had to try and work backwards until you figured out how to.
Well, Seamus at the bar doesn't like to repeat himself, so.
No, yeah.
Now, to be fair, you can't blame it all on the instructions when it took you about 10 minutes to figure out that you needed to actually serve the drinks instead of throwing them in the trash.
Yeah, how often do you go to a bar, you ask for something, the barman mixes it and shows it to you, and that's it, and then he drinks it.
Well, I mean, this is an Nancy Drew game. It's a game for kids. I didn't think that they'd actually be drinking the alcohol. You know, that sort of thing's usually frowned upon.
Yeah. The old Irish git one that wants it.
I want to know what old Irish pub he's going in to get these cocktails as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I think the old Irish man's one of the best characters in any Nancy Drew game. Like, I don't know. It's just a weird experience. But I don't know if the difficulty was just the fact that I am not good at puzzle games at all. I think it's a great game, outstanding game perhaps. I don't know, but
steady.
Okay, now Helden, you're all about the extremes, right? You know the extreme bad. What do you know about the extreme good? Is this one outstanding?
Okay, well, let's be fair to the game in terms of just on its own merits. Although the puzzles in it were difficult, there wasn't a lot of backtracking or having to find things. I think that it was in a very well-contained area, and although the puzzles themselves were difficult, it was often quite easy to understand what you had to do next to progress. There wasn't, I don't think, like I've seen some people where they'd be walking back and forth a lot to try and figure out like where the next puzzle is, you know, where is it hidden, and I don't think there was a lot to that.
Yeah, but to be fair, your Nancy Drew didn't have to walk. Don't want to spoil it, but...
Oh yeah, well, yeah, that is true. She you know, Nancy, she gets around, doesn't she?
And the fatal errors in your game were amazing, right? They were actually animated. You actually felt like you were having those things done.
They were so good. They were so good that I thought that we had to see them at least a couple of times.
Right, I'm going to be bold and say this was great. It's our first truly great Nancy Drew game. There are others out there that will really show us what outstanding is, but this game has no real downsides. Difficulty's not really a downside as long as it's explained well, and I don't think we can leverage Uristo's inability to follow instructions as a lament against the game.
Okay, so like the ending to the game comes out of literally nowhere, and it feels like it's so disconnected from the plot. Normally that would be a downside because it's like, this is literally nothing to do with anything I've done up until this point. But at the same time, it's just so bizarre, weird, and out of place that you're like, okay, well, that's fair enough then. You know, fair enough. I'm not going to complain. It's
the rest of the game hadn't really been grounded in reality until then. So
it's just kind of like, of course that would happen. You know,
the end of the game is really the only major downside for me because it just ends. It's literally like I don't think you thought it was going to end there. I definitely didn't think it was going to end there. I thought there was going to be more to it.
I'd say,
was like, all right, yeah, this is the end.
If the ending had been handled better, it would be outstanding. But that's what keeps it at great. And I am, I would want to put this higher, but I think it belongs in great there.
I tend to agree. I think outstanding is a little strong for this one.
We'll have outstanding down the line. Don't you know it, Helden?
I don't think I don't think I'll ever be able to forget that sodding music though. Oh my god.
Well, if you do end up as a barman in some crappy Irish pub, be sure to play it in the speakers there. Right, we're gonna move along away from Ireland, very far away from Ireland here, to the 20th game, Ransom of the Seven Ships. This was actually my game. It was so bad that it was actually discontinued August of this year, but it came out in 2009, and for this one, Nancy, George, and Bess are all invited to a Paradise Island vacation, so it's a vacation instead of an internship, but Bess has gone missing, and the island appears to be deserted. This is the first Nancy Drew game that blessed the channel, and at the time, it looked awful, like you really didn't think games could get any worse. But since then, we've seen 32 other Nancy Drew games that have taught us otherwise. So this game has been slated by critics and by Sassy Detective, of course. They put it on their lowest tier, tier 4. But I wanna sing its praises at this point. The puzzles were good. I might have made a pig's ear of them, but Ransom of the Seven Ships actually had good puzzles, monkey games notwithstanding. Speaking about it, there were funny monkeys there, right? How many games have nicely animated animals that you can play around with? The game had almost no characters, which is kind of a strong point because many of the games just have absolutely insane characters that you don't want to be around. It's actually kind of elevated, in my view, since playing. Do any of you have contentious remarks about that?
I feel like you're trying to make a strong case for this to be outstanding right here.
According to the chat, the first Nancy Drew game on the channel was Castle Malloy.
Okay, yeah, well that didn't get completed, so it's null and void.
Well, I can understand why you'd have difficulty with it, Jake. I've obviously completed it myself. So,
so I was going to say a lot of what you said, Jake, about how it seemed so bad back then, and then now it feels a lot better. This was apparently George's first physical appearance, I think I read, so that's kind of cool. But there was just so much backtracking, there was a lot of pixel hunting, there were terrible minigames that you had to do.
Okay, right, thanks for grounding us back in reality with those horrible memories. Yeah, there was a god-awful top-down golf cart driving around. You know, in Secret of the Clock, right, you get to drive around in this cool 1930s car. Here you're in this golf cart powered by water. There were some pretty awful puzzles, right? Underwater timed color-based Sudoku.
That was.
And the underwater maze as well. Oh,
the reading comprehension puzzle, if I remember rightly, when you were underwater, was amazing.
Oh yeah.
That was complete
abandoned keys. Be a man. Oh man. But you know, when you got it, you really got it, and you're like, "Ooh, that's clever." Maybe I'm just jaded from being bamboozled by it. I feel like I can't fairly tier this one because I had at the time really negative experience with it. So, how do you feel about it, Fanofgaming? Where would you place?
Well, I was going to also add that, there's the very terrible character in Coco, but it's balanced out by the very good character of the Jamaican guy who wasn't really Jamaican.
I think some people would have exactly the opposite opinion as what you just said there.
Well, I don't think it's good. I definitely don't think it's terrible. I think it leans in so-so.
If we say it's so-so, we're saying it's as good as Blackmore Manor and Kappu Cave, and it is not. Yeah. It is definitely not.
I don't feel fair putting it above Icicle Creek. Because I feel like Icicle Creek was a better game than this. Even with all the tedium.
It's not as bad as Deception Island and Danger by Design. I think it's poor then. You know, I'd love to be contentious and say, it's good or it's great and really stick it to Sassy and Co. But it's not great. It's not good. it's pretty poor. I'm saddened by that, but you're bringing back all the horrible memories of playing it as well. So
Came in with, oh, it's pretty good. I remember.
well, I wanted to be fair. I wanted to be fair. It's easy to bash your own game, but it's all right. We'll leave it in poor, and we'll move on then. Because next up we have the 21st game, which is Warnings at Waverley Academy. Really early game, ran in the marathon by Forever Lona, who is not available for Discourse. So, on this one, Nancy goes undercover at an all-girls school to solve a mystery of threatening black cat notes that are being left around the place. Well, who wants to start us off?
If I remember, because this one is very long ago and I haven't watched it back since watching it at the start of the marathon. If I remember rightly, this one was. I thought it was surprisingly good. I thought the premise. I didn't think it was going to be as good as it was. And I'm not sure if it was the fact that there was. I think it was the first one where we had 2 people running it, because I think it was Lona and her partner, I think, and that was an excellent experience as well.
It was a good experience seeing something run by 2 people, because there was a good bit of yin yang off of. They were bantering off of each other when doing it. It also helped solve some of the more head pounding puzzles that were there. There were a lot of puzzles, I thought, and actually good puzzles there. I quite liked the putting together map of the USA one, especially when you're not American. And there was actually a half-decent puzzle with the boiler. The production quality was actually pretty high. I mean, you compare the models of these girls compared to that spindly little girl in Blackmore Manor. You know, it was pretty good. I actually thought the hair animation was surprisingly good, which isn't easy to get right.
Whose design I didn't like very much was that one girl with the pink hair. I thought that was a little over the top.
She's just trying to express herself.
I mean, nothing wrong with that. It's just something about the way she looked kind of didn't sit right with me.
There were some real downsides to the game, in my view. It was full of high school drama. Now, maybe that's a plus side if you are a high school girl playing this, but most of us here are not. And you had that bloody tuck shop that you had to deal with.
How dare the game for high school children feature high school students prominently?
Well, you know, it's all about being inclusive these days, right?
Yeah.
You know, where was the No, let's not go there. In any case, the game. I don't think it was that great. I think the run was great, very entertaining to watch. But as the game itself, it has good, it has bad. I think it kind of mellowed out in the middle between those. Certainly better than the likes of Icicle Wolf Guy, but it's no Scarlet Hand or Crystal Skull. It's very off-putting to me seeing Phantom of Venice in the good category. I'm having to.
We can move it higher if you want.
Oh no!
I just want to point this out real quick. Tornado Waters is saying that one of the tragedies of the marathon was the lack of a Dark Young and Nancy stream, but I don't think there's a Nancy Drew game where you get to shoot somebody you're allied with in the back. So
I think you get a gun in Secrets Can Kill, but you can't shoot your friends in the back with it. I think we're getting an overwhelming so-so when it comes to Warnings at Waverley. Had some good, had some bad, but it didn't stick out in either way.
If it had higher stakes, that would have gone a long way to making it more exciting.
Oh yeah, Christ! There wasn't really anything at stake, right?
Yeah, when you discount the experience of the actual stream itself, yeah, I'd put it in so-so.
Okay. In that case, let's move on to Trail of the Twister. This was a very early. Well, it kind of spanned the whole marathon because Fish Lips just kept coming back for more. I don't see him around in the green room, so we can't bring him in for some grilling on that. But holy moly! So in this one, Nancy joins a group of storm chasers to figure out what's going wrong because there's all this sabotage going on within the team. Tier 4 on Sassy, so they didn't like it. My initial thought was it actually had a lot of puzzles, and the puzzles it had were good. You had this cogs puzzle, there was a file management, which was painful to see Fish Lips struggle with, but I actually thought was pretty clever. There was the Queen's puzzle, which I think is a classic. Like, if you don't know the solution, it's quite an elegant one. I think it was done on an an 8x8 grid as well. You know, I like those puzzles. The cast in the game was pretty mediocre, except for Pa. Pa was a real gem in the game. So, you know, had its good, had its bad, but the bad was pretty bad in it. Any further on that?
A huge lowlight for this game was the just awful minigame where you have to trap the mice. And you have to do it like 4 or 5 times, and it's just awful every time.
I'm a little tired of catching mice. Well, maybe I'm a little tired of selling you stuff and being an all-around nice guy, you know what I'm saying?
That was one of my favorite clips of the whole marathon.
Oh, it was great. I mean, yeah, that was a big downside for the game, but hilarious to see. And that's what I'm talking about. We have to divorce the run from the ratings here.
There have been some great clips from this marathon, though.
There have.
It's another game where the stakes just kind of weren't really that high. Like, was there even a crime? Or were you just getting ready for a twister? Like,
I mean, kind of not.
Wasn't the crime like some sabotage or something, and they were trying to get funding?
Yeah, like I said, it lacked weight. It really lacked weight as to what was going on there. I'm not really willing to put it any higher than poor, honestly. Had some good, but it did have some real detractors.
In the whole series, I think.
Sorry, what was that?
It did have the best driving in the whole series.
Oh man, yeah, it did have. You could ram into everything, and as long as you got back with a sliver of health, your car would be fine. Yeah. So certainly better than the driving in 7 Ships, but I couldn't rate it above.
Castle Malloy has the best driving because Nancy immediately crashes her car at the start of the game, so you don't have to drive at all.
That's true. And then this grubby Irishman wants your car keys. That was all kinds of dodge. Okay, let's carry on here, as we still do have quite a few games to cover, and make our way over to Japan with Shadow at Water's Edge. Do we have Singing Fury? Doesn't look like we do. So, plot here is Nancy's going on a sightseeing trip in Kyoto at one of their traditional inns, and ever the skillful individual, she's also teaching English while she's there. My initial impressions of this game was, it looks really good, right? Actual puzzles, looks great, sounds great, but when you actually get into it, I actually thought it was pretty god-awful. I've played a bit of it, and watching it, it didn't look like it improved much at all.
I think this game did something that a lot of the other ones didn't do that well, which is it had like a progression of difficulty. Like it introduces you to the simpler Sudokus, and then later it throws the Master Sudoku, and that was kind of cool.
Oh, I'm being told we do have Singing Fury because they are one of these awful people that use multiple names within the same community. Am I right? Is this Singing Fury, aka Jeep Driver? I don't know if I'm right, but they're not saying anything. Chat was saying it's them, though.
Sorry, yeah.
There we go. Right. Apologies for not bringing you in from the start, but as the runner of Shadow at Water's Edge, how did you find your run of the game? How do you think it compares to the other Nancy Drews?
I had some problems.
Oh, you're both there. Excellent.
Yeah, we're both here. I feel I had some major issues with like the premise of the game. I was like, Nancy Drew's getting trapped, and that was very stressful. And I also felt like there wasn't a mystery. Like I feel like she was just prying into people's like private family matters.
I mean, that's what Nancy Drew does through and through.
True. And I also, I have played many Nancy Drew games in my life. I grew up playing them. And I think I like Nancy Drew puzzles that there's like an intuitive way to solve them and they're not like just actual games that exist. Just because I think when Nancy Drew has to explain to you how to do something, it doesn't do it very well. But I do agree that the progression of the difficulty in the puzzles was there, which I guess helps, but that also meant there were only like 3 types of puzzles we were doing.
Yeah, so you had Sudoku, you had Nonogram, and you occasionally had just peeling apart parts of the wall to find other things to progress with.
Right, and bento boxes.
Oh god, the
Bento
bento. I had some other thoughts about the game in general, that the whole world felt empty. I mean, you're in Kyoto, in Japan, and, you know, there's almost nobody going about. You ride around on the train, it's empty, it's dark, it's horrible. And I just thought, you know, it all looked so good to start with, and then just fell apart when you figured that's all there is to the game.
It's so strange to me that they chose to have a major city and also have the city be like allegedly navigable, where you can go to like different areas in the city and it's all just like empty and dead. Like there are games, there's one that's in New Orleans, which I forget which one, but you're like proximal to a specific location, so you're only in like one place in the French Quarter, but there's kind of at least like a logical reason that the city is limited to this one place. But there's no logical reason because they have to put in this. I was reading reviews of this game and people were like, "Oh, I love the subway map puzzle," and I'm like,
What?
"Oh, it's a puzzle."
What's there to love about it?
It's just a thing that's inconvenient.
The characters that were there I found were pretty good. I really liked Rintaro, especially.
Yeah.
You don't say.
Her profile picture.
What do you mean? This is a deer.
Oh god, no. No, I'm not seeing it. I was gonna say, yeah, I guess they're endearing, but they're not. There's this old woman that you're just constantly harassing. You get one bit of information and immediately start throwing accusations at her. It's like, you're gonna give her a bloody heart attack. Slow down, Nancy.
Well, also the receptionist. I mean, I think it's supposed when you do the fatal error, if you show her the article of her mother's death, I think it's supposed to just be that she kicks you out, but I choose to believe that she just murders you.
It's a fatal error.
It did have a good spooky moment, though, right? You solve a puzzle, you turn around, and suddenly it's drown time.
Oh yeah, that was like actually the scariest moment in the marathon.
Yeah,
for me.
oh, I was loving that.
I screamed.
Oh, you did scream.
I'd like to apologize to everyone.
Yeah, poor headphone users. Right, so let's try and weigh this game up against the other Nancy Drews. We've obviously had a lot, and you say you've played many during your time. How would you rate it here on this tier list that we're putting together?
I would put it in poor. I feel like it doesn't like not make sense, and there's not like glaring horrible errors, but I just don't think it's like engaging, and I thought it was inconvenient and irritating. But some people really like it, so.
Well, they are probably quite wrong. It certainly doesn't deserve to be up in so-so, but it doesn't have the real hallmarks of terrible that other games we have. So I'm satisfied with it living its life of misery over in poor alongside the likes of Stay Tuned for Danger.
Excellent.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for the input there, and for taking the journey out to Japan so that nobody else had to, because it did look quite a miserable affair. And with that, we shall get moving on.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Righto, next up, it's time for the Captive Curse. It was run by an angry chemist, as you might know, Uristo. For this one, Nancy arrives at a German tourist castle and has to investigate some monster sightings. Speaking of monsters, let's bring in the runner, Dr. Nitram, aka Nitro. Welcome aboard, Nitro. You ran this 24th game, which is also Tier 4 by Sassy Detective. Tell us your hot take on the game and how you think it compares to the others.
I do not agree with Sassy there. Well, to give an idea of the game, it was one of those language games, just like where it takes place in another country, just like the one in France or the one in Italy. But unlike those games, there was actually some language element to some puzzles, which I thought was quite good. That being said, the Germans are all a discount idea of what a German should be, which was amazing for torturing every single German in chat. But the puzzles in general were pretty good. So in that regard, I would put it higher. The downside was that between every single puzzle, there was about an hour of phone conversations.
Now, I don't want to hear you smack talk the phone conversations. There and then, at the time, you were lapping it up because we had that angry, yelling German on his car phone. So you can't turn around to me now and say that the phone calls were bad when we were having the time of our life.
Okay, that guy was amazing. I have to give you that. He was enjoyable to listen to. The voice actor was clearly having the time of his life doing that. but having to go back between like 4 different people, including Ned, just to like hope you can make some advances and then talk to all the other people in the castle was a bit tedious. And then the cast was of people in person was actually quite good. You had the super over enthusiastic German guy who loved playing board games with.
Yeah, I would have had a miserable time playing through those. How did you find the massive amount of card games?
The it wasn't that bad. I think that the concept of the game they had there was pretty alright, but of course it was random as hell, just like the monkey game you played, for example. But for the artwork was nice, and the concept of like cards themselves was pretty alright. And of course, having to do a puzzle later with them made it fit in the world. That's one of the pluses I have with the game as well. Almost every single puzzle fits into the world. Of course, an Enigma machine does very much fit in Germany, so that's a given.
So I'm getting mixed signals here then. So did it strike you as a particularly good game in the series? I mean, is it up there with Blue Moon Canyon, or were you thinking that it didn't have enough pluses?
I think it has enough pluses to put it that good. If you were doing it to like in a marathon setting, it isn't that great because you're running around a lot. But overall, I enjoyed the puzzles. The setting was kind of small, but as with other games, actually that big of a drawback. So
yeah, actually, we find that concise games tend to be better than cycling or subwaying around a large area. Do we have any second opinions on how good it is from Fan, Helden, or Uristo?
I don't understand why Sassy put it at tier 4. I don't think it's nearly that bad. I would not put it lower than so-so.
I don't think we can begin to understand Sassy. I think they're just on like a different level than we are. Obviously, they're looking for something different in Nancy Drew games than we are. That's just the way it is.
I'm personally leaning towards great for this game because I thought the cast was good. I'm not a German, but I thought the atmosphere was great. I thought all the puzzles were good. There was a lot of downtime in between, and the phone calls were.
Tedious at a certain point.
Yeah, tedious at a certain point, but I think it didn't ever feel like poorly paced. I suppose like the plot kept moving. It was a relatively tight setting. Yeah, I'm leaning on great, to be honest. Great or good is where I would put it.
I'd have a hard time putting it in great, given that it had the tedium. Given that I don't think it was terribly exciting, right? When we think of the other great game that we put up there, Malloy, lots of excitement, great puzzles, not a lot of downsides. Whereas this one, it seems to have some good sides. I don't personally think it was so good, but I think it has too many detractors to put it up there with Malloy.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this one's going to have to live in good. It doesn't deserve so-so, though. It's certainly above the likes of Kappu and Secrets
It was enjoyable in the end, so...
But do you think you had a good time playing through it then?
I did. The puzzles that I had were pretty good. I struggled at a few, but that was tunnel vision and DDR blind, of course. But
I think that's a good indicator if you come out thinking I had a good time. It's not like hearing I had a miserable time with this game like the Carousel one. So
wait, Nitro, you struggled with some puzzles? I judging from the way you were talking in chat, I would have thought that you would actually have no trouble at all with them.
Compared to you, I absolutely blazed through the game. So I don't think you want to go there. Sorry, Uristo.
Oh wow!
But
listen,
I had a puzzle.
We'll eventually get to Helden's run if we really want to talk about struggling. So don't you worry, the ammunition's there. Okay, so we've got another entry for good. You know, you might have thought we'd just come in and just slam everything down to crappy, but between the Nancy Drew games, there really is a spectrum of quality, and we're painting that picture right now. Thanks for your input, though, Nitro. We shall move on forward.
Have a good night.
Righto. Now, next up is the 25th game, released 2011, Alibi in Ashes. This one was run by Doc Spengler. Is he around? He is indeed around. Welcome, Spengler. It's time for your Alibi in Ashes. So in this game, Nancy burns down a beloved building, but gets off the hook on a technicality. and then goes to frame somebody else. It very different from the other games in my opinion. But Spengler, how did you find your time with it, and how did it compare?
I actually enjoyed it. It felt like it had a good story, so to speak. Like, it felt like I was actually in the middle of trying to figure out who was framing me. The puzzles were fun but fail. I was pretty bad at them, except it seemed like there were a few that I accidentally rigged up the answer to. I will say the lock-picking puzzle was very interesting, and I'm kind of shocked that I got that one as quickly as I did.
You touched on something there where you said, you know, this actually felt like a detective game, and I think it really comes out differently from the rest of them, where that, yeah, it's kind of personal, your own kind of life is on the line, or your life in lockup, but, you know, you do actually go around finding clues and piecing the whole thing together. You don't initially know what happened, and you have to sort it out to get yourself off the hook, and I thought that really elevated it. It wasn't necessarily a puzzles per se. You solve puzzles to get the clues that you then piece together to solve the mystery, and I think that heavily elevates the game just because it actually feels like a detective game.
I agree. The premise was very good right from the get-go.
Yeah, I was very happy with that.
I completely agree, especially the fact that it started out with you, Nancy, in City Hall, and then it goes out to a news broadcast, and you instantly get thrown into this almost like city politics type of thing, and it's just a very interesting way to start off a game in general.
Yeah, we talked about other titles that felt like they didn't have much conclusion, or like things didn't really go well together, but here I thought everything was quite well interlinked. You do puzzle it out, it does feel like you're a detective doing it. I think it's a very strong case for the game. I see a lot of people in chat saying, it was good, but I actually thought this one was pretty great. I need to highlight some downsides of it, though. The characters were utterly insufferable.
I can understand why.
Now, I'm not an American, maybe that's part of it, but I really thought, you know, you had that cliche news girl, you had the ice cream lady there. I just didn't want to be around them whatsoever. Not to mention there was a lot of Bess and a lot of George and a lot of jumping between them without any quality of life.
Oh god, the jumping around was the worst part of that game, bar none.
How Minette out of 10 would you say that these characters were, Jake, in terms of insufferable?
Oh, okay. Well, when Minette makes like a 12 or 13 in her own, but these ones, I mean, they felt like they were just bad cliche movie characters, like bad ones at that. But, you know, that's a detraction that for me stops the game being outstanding. I think it was that good when it comes to actually being a good detective game. I thought there were good puzzles in it as well. Okay, maybe because you're fattening up Bess with enough ice cream that you can go and sleuth around the place. But I did think that was a nice touch. It's like, okay, Bess likes ice cream. Maybe we should shove her fat face with it enough to actually solve the puzzle. Now, Sassy put this one at tier 4, which I think is unforgivable.
I completely disagree with Sassy. I'm just like, what were you smoking that day?
Well, the fumes off of the City Hall, obviously.
I will throw out one more thing that was a downside for me. I felt like there were already quite a lot of locations, but then the fact that you also had to visit them as so many different characters, it made the game feel a lot harder to navigate than it needed to be.
Yeah, some things have to be done with certain characters, and you know, you always have to phone back to Nancy to switch between them. Was a rough one.
You know, Jake, I'm really looking forward to the upcoming debate stream with Sassy Detective. That's going to be fun.
Oh, debate me all day long, Sassy, right? It's about time somebody called out you on your fraud. You're the monopoly on Nancy Drew, but we're here to take you down.
But you know what? I think the premise was so great and the stakes were so good right from the start. I think this game could sit in great.
I would be very happy putting it up there with Malloy. I just think for the downsides, and there were plenty of them, this game just really felt like the heart of what Nancy Drew is all about. Kleptomania included.
Yep, 100%.
All right, well, if we've got the runner also backing that one up, what more can we say? I just want to say, of all the Nancy Drew runs, I enjoyed watching most of them, but this one really stuck out for me, and yeah, part of it was your performance, but it was also just such a great game as well, so thanks a lot for running that one, Spengler.
Anytime.
All right.
But first, wait, I got a question for you.
Go for it.
What's your favorite ice cream?
Oh, man. Rocky Road.
Pretty good.
Good choice.
Please don't send me Rocky Road in a letter. That would be weird.
Everyone ship Jake Rocky Road ice cream.
All right, thanks a lot, Spengler.
Cheers.
Righto, that got a little weird, so let's get back on track. Number 26, Tomb of the Lost Queen. This was my second of 3 games that I ran. Released on PC and Mac in 2012, this one features Nancy helping out in an archaeological dig searching for an aforementioned lost queen, but disaster strikes the team, and you have to figure out why, and why does it keep happening. Lots of talks of curse and the supernatural in this one, but Nancy, ever the skeptic, digs down, literally and figuratively. At the time, this one felt really bad. You know, it had these horrible characters. You had Hotchkiss on the phone. But at the time, I didn't really appreciate that it looked really good. And it had, you know, Uristo, that bloody Castle Malloy music is playing now. And it's drilling into my head. I can practically see that old Irish bastard staring at me as he sips the same drink for 7 hours. Anyway, this game also had the UI redo, so everything looks a lot fancier. You actually have the hints and guidance, even if you're playing as a senior moments detective. So it was really well polished. It had pretty good levels of production quality going on.
Yeah.
The puzzles were good. The puzzles were even very good.
This is probably the first one that we could call a modern Nancy Drew game, I think.
Yeah, it you know, I think after Alibi and Ashes, which was pretty damn great, they really stepped up their gear, and I think we're going to see that as we go through the next few games. Downsides on this one, the characters were awful. Really bloody awful.
That
guy, what was he called again? Sorry, the really dreadful one.
The English guy or the
English
tour
one,
guide, tour guide guy he's just talking in riddles the whole time. You don't know why he's there, and I still don't know why he was there. But we were able to crush him to death, so you know it wasn't all that bad. Yeah, the more you say about the characters, the worse they get. The lead archaeologist there, the alien obsessed woman, they were torturous to be around. In a game that was otherwise really good with puzzles and atmosphere and polish, just the people you had to share that scenario with dragged it down so badly. What are we thinking then?
How did it drag it down?
Yeah, I wouldn't bring it down to so-so. It wasn't that bad, but it's not a great. It's not up there with Malloy. No way, no how.
You thinking good?
I'm thinking it's good, unless somebody has a really compelling argument otherwise.
No, I think everything's been said already. I agree about the characters. Dylan, I think that was the guy. Dylan, was he the annoying one?
Yeah, he was English bugger.
Yeah, I agree about the characters, but otherwise, yeah, I'd say it was good.
I mean, who could imagine at the time of playing that we'd reflect on Nancy Drew in the Tomb of the Lost Queen as a good Nancy Drew game? Like, I want to go back and just open my eyes. Okay, well that.
I was going to say none of the characters were Irish drunk too, right?
Okay,
like,
yeah, that's what brings it down from great, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to number 27, The Deadly Device. We got Marvin who ran it, and we're going to bring him in straight away. Welcome, Marvin. For your 2012 release of The Deadly Device, Marvin, you tell us what the game was about. Give us a lowdown on the plot and how you felt your run of it went.
The game is actually about a murder. One of the few actually with a murder, which was one of the reasons why I chose it. It's centered around a lab, so it has lots of science puzzles. And I actually think it was great.
Getting straight to the point there. Straight to the point.
Straight. It had a lot of great puzzles. I didn't get lost anywhere. It was a very compact game. You didn't have much space to get lost in because you only had a handful of rooms. There were some things I didn't like the fact that you had to change day and night was a bit pointless, but you had to do it for some things, but it wasn't a big nuisance for anything. I liked the twist. It was telegraphed a bit early, but I still liked it. It had some great characters. Ellie was a bit boring, but Ryan was big fun. Mason was big fun as an asshole. Gray was a great character. And yeah, it got a bit moon logic at the end, especially when I don't think we do spoilers here. But in the end it got a bit moon logic, but most of it was pretty great if you ask me.
I have one major thing that I have to disagree with you on. It's not great, it's outstanding.
Wow.
This game had such great production standards. It was really well contained. Like, everything was within the lab, about the lab. The characters, none of them were particularly grating. The worst thing you could say is one person was a little bland. I really liked the appearance of Dr. Wallace Breen taking a step away from Half-Life to come and join us here in the lab. And it had lots of puzzles that stuck to the theme, and none of them felt like, except towards the end, none of them felt particularly moon logic. And there was actually, there was something on the line. There was a murder. And not to spoil things got even more drastic. I really liked the USB stick puzzle there was as well, and the security guard was just golden.
Yeah, to cap it all off, that cover art is just fantastic, isn't it?
It's like, this will be you. You will master electricity like nobody has ever done so before.
That'd make a good emote, actually, if you could.
Oh yeah, if we could shrink him down, so even better than Nancy Drew. Okay, let's focus on downsides of the game because we have to give it the fair raking over coals. But I'm drawing a blank. You're gonna have to help me.
My only downside would be the moon logic towards the end, as previously mentioned. But even that, compared to some of the moon logic in previous games and upcoming games, it's nothing.
No. I mean, yeah, as a game, maybe it gets a bit moon logical, but as a Nancy Drew game, it is cut and dry. The worst thing this game has is like a poor display of diodes. Otherwise, it's just great. And to top it all off, the music was fantastic. I think you mentioned this during it as well, Marvin.
Definitely.
Like, the music, you felt like you were in a lab, felt kind of high stakes. It wasn't dreary, boring, or mind-numbing like your Irish pub music.
So often those sciencey music effects in the background where the chatter thought the steam was going off. It was boop, boop.
And the characters were genuinely witty. Like, the writing was actually funny. You had that girl with her graph about how happy she is when she has to do this stuff for you. Or you have like you have Integral Hamster in the game telling you how he hates everybody.
People stumped out.
I kind of wish we were playing clips here because I'd love to have an appearance of him there. But I think we can be in agreement. This game was, out of all the ones we've looked at so far, this was the best.
I would have gone with great, but I very much get outstanding. It was really a great game. I had a lot of fun playing it. I think I had one puzzle where I actually had to brute force. One puzzle I did brute force because I didn't understand it, but it was doable for other people. It didn't have a good minigame. It had one minigame, aggregation, which was a bit bland, but the game itself,
maybe we should be grateful for that. I mean, think of the other minigames we've had, like cooking, sandwich making, beer making, arcade games, spot the difference. It could be that less is more when it comes to the dangerous device, or the deadly device, rather.
And it's a tier 3 sassy game.
Yeah. What? were Sassy thinking when they said tier 3?
I really don't understand
We don't get to know because all of the reviews are gone. The 404, you can't even find them in the archives.
Yeah.
If someone out there is a massive Sassy detective fan and has somehow archived it, trust me, there are literally hundreds of people desperate to know what they were thinking. We want to read those reviews, but we just don't have access to it.
I think the only review left on there is the review for Midnight in Salem because I remember reading.
We'll get there.
I remember reading that review.
I feel very confident that they cross their eyes and throw a dart at a wall to see what they rate their games.
I think it's just, maybe it's very different people, right? We're a certain audience around here. In any case, thank you, Marvin, both for coming in and for running the game. One thing I'd like to say is that maybe someday you should run one of these awful Nancy Drew games, maybe one that you didn't watch, so that you can kind of see the bullet that you dodged.
Maybe.
Because I'd like to see how you do in France doing menial tasks
Oh,
for
yeah,
an
there was some
insane
real-
fashion designer. All right, thanks, Marvin. We'll carry
goodbye.
on.
Most people would have picked their games at complete random, right? So it's really funny to see how bad, like some of the bullets that people dodged.
Yeah, during it, I asked everybody, why did you join and why did you pick the game? And lots of people said randomly. Which is quite amusing. It's like you could have had any of these, but you ended up with somehow one of the god-awful ones. Right, next up is my third game. No, it was the second one that I ran, but this is Ghost of Thornton Hall 2013. I'll say straight away that Sassy Detective rates this as a tier 1 game. They think it's 2 tiers higher than Deadly Device. In this one, Nancy is called to solve a kidnapping that's happened in some haunted house where even skeptical people have seen a ghost. Well, in this one, there were puzzles, and they weren't that bad. There were spooks, and they weren't that bad. There was a twist. It was very, very bad.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what else I want to say about this game. You guys got any input?
Let's be honest. Nancy Drew has already done this. This basic idea. The ghost in the haunted castle. That's already been done. I don't think they're able to do it as good as the first time around.
They didn't even explain it as well this time. Again, they don't explain the supernatural stuff well at all.
Nope.
Oh yeah. The explanation for what happened in this is just so awful.
God awful.
Yeah.
Piss me off.
So based on the actual existence and puzzles and how good the puzzles were, and some of them were pretty good, I would say it's a good one. But when you bring in the characters, the plot, the twist, I couldn't put it higher than So-So, but it's not as bad as Twister or Being in Japan.
Let's not forget, the puzzles did exist. They are there, but could you
just have to find them?
Oh man, the loose floorboards. People were yelling at me for not seeing that, but how often do you look at the floorboards to try to figure out which ones are loose or not?
That was some of the most egregious pixel hunting in the series, I think.
Well,
at least the ones you played.
Maybe I just made it look bad, but everybody has their look bad moments when they're playing Nancy Drew. At least there were no weasels in my one. Okay. I'm still not seeing how that one was tier 1 for Sassy, but I don't think we ever will. Next up is Pizzarific's Silent Spy. And we do have Pizzarific, I believe. We'll bring him right in. Welcome, Pizza. That's an amazing looking profile picture that I think is going to be lost on viewers of the future. You played Silent Spy, came out in 2013, and in this game, Nancy went off to Scotland to solve her late mother's final case. How did you find your experience in Scotland, which I'm going to go on a limb and say is not somewhere that you're often in, and how do you think it compares to the other Nancy Drew games?
Well, it's not quite as good as Scotland in real life, which, might say something. But Sassy Detective rated this one as a tier 1 game, and it goes to show that sometimes a blind man can still hit the mark. This game was actually fantastic, as Nancy Drew games go.
Okay.
There was one pretty big downside where I was hunting for a blue slip of paper that blocked my progress for moon logic reasons that makes me hesitate to put it as an outstanding game. But up until that point, I was running through the game with a good variety of puzzles. We had bus, we had passwords, there was a music puzzle, there was decoding, there was Sudoku. I got to make cookies, which was the reference to this profile picture. And sure, these puzzles were awful for me because I was colorblind and couldn't make the cookies. But I mean, overall, I look at the game and I go, I could almost recommend this game to someone.
Yeah, production standards were pretty high. The story was interesting. Like it felt good to kind of explore part of Nancy Drew's life through the case. Tons of puzzles. And to top it all off, you had Scottish Boris there yelling at you, telling you to stop messing with that. And, you know, when I'm actually laughing at the game and not just the runner's poor performance, you know you've got a good witty one on your hands. So I do like the, you know, when people come in and you can hear in their voice whether they had a good time or not. It's good to hear that you actually had a great time with yours.
Yeah, if you're looking for a Nancy Drew game to play, this is one of the 3 or 4 I'd actually suggest you pick up.
This is what we're here to be. We are here to be the definitive Nancy Drew ranking. So, do we have many downsides that we can pull in for this one though? Let's give it a fair shot from both angles here.
I think the making the cookies was the biggest downside. It was tedious. You had to be exactly correct. It was pretty rough.
Yeah, like many of the Nancy Drew games, when there's a mini game when you have to make something like money that you got to spend, it's almost always horrible and tedious. Fortunately for you, it wasn't making bootleg Mona Lisas, but the cookies, once you've done one, you've done them all.
The upside to the downside was it was a fairly fast way of making money. Each cookie got me like 8 or 9 euros.
There's someone in the chat saying that making cookies IRL is tedious as well, but if you make them IRL, you get the cookies at the end.
Yeah, you could eat the ones in Nancy Drew. Any puzzles stick out for you for being particularly highlights or lowlights of the run?
The highlight for me was the tartan puzzle, where I've solved it surprisingly fast. I expected that one to take me like an hour, just because I was having trouble distinguishing the different colors of the tartan that I was trying to make. But forgetting to put the red stripe in the middle was the biggest, like, oh man, moments of the run.
Nothing like a good old pizza reset to really get you going on that.
Absolutely.
I am a little torn on this one though. We don't really have many downsides for it, but deep down, I just don't feel it's Deadly Device territory. It was great, but was it really up there? Let's have a rundown. Fan, any strong feelings?
Yeah, so one thing that really elevates it for me is that it comes out the gate really quickly with pretty high stakes. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but like at one point, you know, you're dealing with spies who may be willing to kill you.
I mean, it is called the Silent Spy, so yeah, don't think we're
Right.
spoiling too much there.
So that's a big upside for me. I think it's great.
I think it's great. Anyone else got some hot takes?
I do wonder how does it compare to actual Scotland, Jake?
It makes it look a lot cleaner and friendlier to be in than my own experiences there. But the prices seem pretty tourist trappy to me. But come on, you just buy a pack of Jammy Dodgers. You wouldn't go somewhere that's making you fancy cookies like that.
Pizza-sized cookies.
Yeah, jeez. I think we're gonna have to call it great. And I do feel, you know, if there was a line between great and outstanding, it would be there. But it is great. There was no particularly huge downside. It was a lot of fun. The puzzles were plentiful and pretty good, even if they were kind of like one track. It's all about, yeah. Were there many puzzles that just didn't involve lining up colors?
There were in the end. I think the majority of the puzzles had nothing to do with color. There was even one puzzle where I spent like 15 minutes trying to decode the colors, and it ended up being a regular puzzle, no colors involved at all. Which that was funny for me, but no, I mean there was like the vast majority were not color puzzles.
Have you seen many of the other runs yourself then, Pizza?
I'd say I've seen about a third of them the full way through. This one had the most color puzzles that I saw, but still
Okay,
wasn't
but do you think your one is the best of the ones that you saw then? How about that?
No, I think Alpha's is better. I didn't see much of Marvin's, but aside from Alpha's, I don't think that there's any that I saw that were better than mine.
Okay, so we have quite a good bit of confidence in putting you up there as great. Well, thanks for coming in and sharing the cookies. And
While I'm here, I do have to say that I think Stay Tuned for Danger needs an audit. When I was picking one of the 3 games for you to play, Jake, we were looking for games that were pretty god-awful, and that's why we picked 7 ships. And the whole time I was watching Stay Tuned for Danger, I was making the realization that I made a mistake. That was the game to pick. It's 3 tiers worse than terrible. That's one of the worst games
3
I've ever
tiers
seen
worse
play.
than terrible. We've been over Stay Tuned for Danger, but I don't want to go over old ground too much, but it did trailblaze quite a lot.
I feel like I should roll back a comment I made about Stay Tuned for Danger as well, about it not overstaying its welcome. I misread the times on the marathon thing, and it was like an 8-hour-long stream. So if you were to ask me again, I would say put it in terrible instead of poor.
I don't think that's...
I mean, is it really worse than playable games like Danger by Design? The Danger by Design is playable. Stay Tuned for Danger has a soft block, where if you don't grab the knob, you're stuck.
I don't think we would be putting it down that far. That would mean that it's down there with Deception Island and the Hunting of the Sticks for Arizona Ranch, and I'm not seeing it. The game was fairly well contained. It was also the second in the series, the first one to do 3D modeling. We can't hold that against it. And no, I could not review it. Could not review it lower.
Fair enough, then. I had to bring it up.
Well, maybe if Nix, oh man, Nix is around. Well, Nix is gonna have to stay there. He wasn't around at the time, so too bad. Don't do a sassy. We won't step down from our ranking here. It was pretty poor, but I think that Danger by Design, that's true terror.
Well, chat's pretty happy that Pizza spoke the truth at least.
Yeah, you see, you live long enough to become just like Sassy. All right, thanks for the input there, Pizza.
Yeah, of course. Good to be.
Good to be. Okay, let's continue our power trip here and move over to New Zealand with the Shattered Medallion. Do we have a... Oh, of course we've got JJ. Hello,
You
JJ.
sound so disappointed.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I was really big into Thomas the Tank Engine as a toddler. I loved playing with the railways and even playing the Thomas the Tank Engine game. So to me, that railway puzzle, the sheer incompetence there kind of offended me on a primal level. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here. This 2014 release has Nancy and friends take part in New Zealand's adventure reality show, and JJ Ho-Ho was there to show us how to bring home the gold. So tell us, how was your experience in New Zealand, and how do you think it compares to other games?
Awful. Genuinely the worst. Well, not genuinely the worst, but I believe it belongs in terrible. I think there were almost no redeeming qualities about the game. I think that it was maybe a 6-month dev cycle. Like, it felt horribly empty. It felt... The plot felt all over the place. I've got a list, but I don't know how...
Hey, if you've got a list, I want to hear it.
All right, well...
as long as it doesn't have spoilers.
Yeah, so we can start at the plot. There's almost nothing to spoil for the plot, because it doesn't end. You just, go into a cave, and then do a thing, and then the game ends. The show itself, the rules are all made up and the points don't matter. The framing device being the show, neither matters. Like, it's just a means to get you to do menial tasks and complete gigs around the island, which would be fine. if they were interesting at all, but they really weren't. The only crime that was really committed beyond attempted murder, which never gets addressed, was your main... I guess he was a suspect, but he was also the driver behind the entire plot. And to to make happen the circumstances which lead to the game plot being a plot instead of just, I don't know, them going on a fun vacation. He hijacks a plane, I think, and steals the TV crew and takes over the production of a reality TV show. But that's not the crime you're there to solve.
Look, we know by this point that Nancy Drew is very good at skimming over these small details, right? We've launched rockets into England. We've been drowned, you know. You can't let these things get in the way. We're trying to compare Nancy Drew games within themselves, so I don't disagree that the game itself is terrible, but you have to consider that in terrible we already have the Arizona Ranch game, the Dolphin Island, and the eccentric fashion designer. Now, when it comes to the Shattered Medallion, right, the game does look and sound quite good, in my opinion. And there were quite a lot of puzzles going on in there.
There were a lot of puzzles. Puzzle density was okay. I think puzzle difficulty really took a hit, despite my individual ham-handedness, especially with that starting train puzzle. But none of the other puzzles really were challenging or difficult, I found. And again, not speaking as the runner who did it, just kind of, you know, as a puzzle. I didn't really find anything exciting or interesting about any of them. They basically all fell in one shot, a lot of them to brute force. The biggest thing I got stuck on was because of a non-specific wording regarding an Oxford comma.
Oh god, not the Oxford comma again.
Yeah, the Oxford comma got me. I was doing some math wrong because I was summing 3 things instead of 2 things because it was a list of 3 numbers, not 2 numbers, because of an Oxford comma. But yeah, that was like the most challenge I had in the game besides the railroad puzzle. I just didn't really find... in terms of aesthetic, I don't disagree, but I don't think there was any recommendable element of the aesthetic, just that it wasn't particularly offensive. I didn't find, like, it looked okay. It looked more modern than maybe some of the earlier titles, but it didn't stand out in any way to me. The environment design was really limited. There were, I don't know, I mean, at any given point in the game, there were 2 places you were supposed to be total. All of the solutions to puzzles feel like they felt very immediately obvious as soon as you got to the puzzle, because you only had, like, if there was a key for something, you only had 1 key and 1 door at any given time in the plot progression. So there was no real, I mean, not that, you know, combining inventory puzzles or whatever is a high point of adventure game design, but it never really felt like I was being actually challenged in the way that some of the other Nancy's
at this point, we've been looking over 30 of the Nancy Drew games, and you're trying to make the case for this game being like 3 tiers under terrible, or what have you.
I wouldn't say 3 tiers under terrible.
But
I would say
when we compare it to the horrors of some other games, right? I wouldn't say that your game belongs lower than Icicle Creek. Like you had some god awful mini games, especially ones that were copy pasted, if I recall well. Like some of your mini games you had to do, I think we saw before. Maybe in the German game, but it doesn't really compare to the likes of having to make all those meals over and over again in Icicle Creek.
It didn't have anything repetitive or like actively abrasive, I guess I would say, like really painful. I just rank it as terrible by virtue of just like hardly being there.
I do like. I don't want to tell you what to think, but I do think you have the runner's bias of thinking that your experience was awful, therefore it's the worst of the Nancy Drew games. From what I've seen of all the games, and I've watched unbearable amounts of all these games, it didn't really scratch that itch of terrible. It was not oppressively horrible with anything that it did, whereas our current terrible games were. I don't want it to just be a clash of the two of us here, though. Do we have any input from Helden, Urista, or Fan?
Yeah, so I kind of liked the premise of it from the beginning, and then it kind of started to lose me whenever, it really, like JJ said, just ended up being an excuse to do errands.
I thought the premise was a massive wasted opportunity, honestly. Like, there's so many ways that you can make the idea of like a game show interesting, and I don't think that it actually managed to do that at any point.
Yeah,
incredibly arbitrary, basically. I don't think the game would have been that different if it hadn't been a game show, basically.
Yeah, I think the premise is, to me, pretty much the only good thing about it, and like Aristo says, it was very underused. But I would say it's not worthy of the terrible tier because it didn't have that much tedium.
Yeah,
all the puzzles were all right. They didn't fit in the game. They were obviously recycled from other games, but they weren't terrible puzzles, and you didn't necessarily have to do them over and over again.
Yeah, let's consider what we've put in terrible so far, right? We put in Deception Island, which had the god-awful audio balancing and nothing redeeming about it. We had the Shadow Ranch, which had soul-sucking music, god-awful puzzles, everything about that was poor. And of course, Danger by Design, where to even begin with that one. This just doesn't have that massive, edgy bit of horror that pulls it down there. I'm really thinking this is poor. Like, I'm not debating that it doesn't deserve to be a step above poor, but I'm having a hard time putting this one in terrible.
Yeah, I kind of agree from that perspective. Because all of the 3 terrible games in the tier right now have something about them that, like, really hurts, like something actively painful, and this doesn't have that from, like in an obvious way. It hurt me because it was just lazy. It, like, from a, like, craftsmanship perspective, I just didn't.
That's an excellent point, actually. During the past few games, like, we've been talking about good and great games, right? We just had Silent Spy and Deadly Device and Tomb of Lost Queens. They were on a real redemption arc, and then suddenly you have this lazy game. But lazy does not inspire terrible to me, so I think we're going to be placing this one in over in the poor slots.
Yeah, on that axis, I'd agree.
Right. Oh, see, consensus. We could eventually reach it there. Thanks a lot, though, JJ. I know you get a lot of lambasting within the community. You deserve every last bit of it, but I'm glad that you take it with a smile. So thanks for your run and for appearing on the show.
Do my best. Thanks for having me on.
Wonderful. Then we can go along to one that I've personally really been looking forward to talking about. 31 Labyrinth of Lies. Fanofgaming, take it away.
Right, so this game is set in Greece at a museum that focuses on Greek mythology and mythological history. You come in as, I guess, an intern. It's not super well explained because it takes a left turn immediately as you find out that some artifacts have gone missing, and the theater troupe that's putting on a play is acting unbelievably suspicious right from the get-go. So the curator tasks you with kind of doing the tasks that you're there to do, but also investigating the theater troupe. And it, I'm going to come out the gate. I think it was a pretty good game, actually.
Pretty good or pretty great?
I would call it great, personally, if I'm not even going to have to defend it right out.
The defense will have to come shortly. But I just wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth, because it's kind of fun for me to have somebody else explain what the plot is all about. Because when I was going through and making my notes for all the games, it actually got really hard to write down, okay, what's the synopsis of the game? Because so many of them just go banana logic from the start. And then halfway through, you're like, wait, weren't we looking into some, like, lost or stolen goods? And, yeah, anyway. Labyrinth of Lies, though. Yeah, it has a lot of reasons for being good or even great. Puzzles. There were lots of puzzles. you had a unique and inspirational way of dealing with them, but they were there, and I'd be hard pressed. I would debate anybody that tells me that those puzzles were not good.
I loved the puzzles, and obviously towards the end especially, I kind of was out of steam. I feel like they threw so many of them at me in the final act of the game. It was just so dense.
Now you're looking at it the other way. You'd finally picked up steam and were plowing through them. That's why it felt like you were getting a lot of them so quickly. But you know, we had fun times. We were making pottery. We were going around this really elaborate and evocative scene. Visually, the game was very stimulating. Lots of different scenes that you were going through. Lots of fire, lots of props, lots of boulders to jump out of the way from. There's a lot of good things to say about it. But there are also some bad things to say about it. The dialogue was terrible.
I loved
Absolutely terrible. I have proof that you're forging artwork. Sorry, I have to run. And then she continues to sit there. Oh
yeah.
My days, it was...
definitely doesn't make it a good game, but it was hilarious.
It was hilarious, but if I were to be... this game has a lot of hallmarks for outstanding, but just doesn't quite reach up there in my opinion. But I would have no problem putting it up there with the other greats like Malloy and Alibi, because, you know, although the dialogue was pretty awful, the characters I thought were kind of interesting. Yeah, they were all dressed up for the role, and some took to the role more seriously than others. There were actual stakes on the line, not deadly but high value, and it was an interesting game. Like every corner that we turned in the game made me want to see more of it, which kind of made it aggravating to see you not find like computer passwords and stuff, because we had to get moving.
I will say, I think that if I had not gotten lost as badly as I did, the game would have very clearly stuck to its theme throughout. It never would have felt like it got lost from what it was trying to do.
Yeah, no, I'll give you that. It actually tied things together pretty well, and I actually really liked the epilogue. Seems an odd thing to bring up, but I just liked the way that it actually tackled how each of the characters came away from it all. But we don't want to spoil anything here, though.
I think my game is the only one that has a 3D model for Nancy Drew that we get to see.
Was that when you were chained up?
No, it's at the very end. You
Oh yes.
come up and you get to see her right from the back.
Yeah, and well, in a couple of games' time, the 3D will be thrown out of the water. Helden, Uristo, any opposition to this being the great game it was born to be?
Nothing from me, to be honest. I think basically everything's already been said.
Then
I don't know about great. I'm leaning like I'm leaning like a solid good, like a really really good, but not like looking at the other games that are in great, and then comparing this to it. I don't think it's in there with them.
But then you look at it the other way. You compare this to like the Crystal Skull or the Phantom of Venice. No way.
I think if this went in good, it'd be right at the top of good. But I'm not sure it reaches great.
Even the chat's going against you here.
I can fight the chat all day.
Helden is so wrong. Oh, but they're also saying Helden is so right.
Fight the chat all day.
All right. Well, we need a vote swinger here. Uristo, where is it? Is this good or great?
You know what? I don't think it's as good as Castle Malloy, so there you go.
Yes!
I'm going to stick up for my fellow Englishman just this once.
Yes!
Oh, it hurts.
It is the best of the good games.
You could always put it right at the front of all the good games.
Well, it's kind of at the end here. It's a meaningless award, but it's the best of the good games. I don't know. That sits a little wrong with me. I'm trying to think in my head of reasons to think that it's worse.
It's either the best of the good games or the worst of the great games.
I'd rather it be the worst of the greats, honestly.
The thing is, we have runners of each of their games fighting for their, it's not as good as Malloy.
Well, let me put it this way. I think if you watched my stream, you could tell how much I was suffering, but I'm still willing to fight for it, and I think that should say something.
You know what? Normally we reach something of consensus, but you're still fighting for it. I think we're going to slam it in great and move on. It was great. The stunned silence. We're moved by fans' speech there.
Jake, you're giving into the dark youngs of the world. That's all I'll say.
Dark young. I wonder what dark young. Oh, since when is Uristo and Helden's opinions matter?
I was hoping to take that worst of the great slot for Salem, but
oh come on now. You'll be the worst. You'll be the worst of the somethings. Okay.
Standings is what I'm going to step up for now.
Oh, jeez. Well, hey, we got another game to cover before it's time for midnight in Salim, and that is Sea of Darkness. I do believe we have an alpha, and in he comes. Welcome, alpha. Birthday boy of the time, you ran Sea of Darkness, which came out in 2015. In this one, well, you know, you can tell us what the game was all about and what you thought of it.
Well, hello there, everybody. Yeah, so in Sea of Darkness, Nancy goes to Iceland because I think the beginning is that somebody has gone missing while restoring an old ship. And there's some treasure hunter sidekick that hires you to look into why is this Magnus guy missing. And you have to figure out what is up with this old ship that's been restored. And then there's some ice caves later. And it's a lot of great fun. So, right out of that, I want to say I really enjoyed the game. I have to say this is outstanding. If there's any one that you play, it should be this one.
Okay, those are some strong words to come out the gate with. I'm going to have to demand, even though this will be the unpopular opinion, I demand that you justify saying that it's outstanding straight off the bat without using the word Gunnar.
Okay, well, first of all, the atmosphere is still good, even without the best character in the entire series. You can really feel the bleakness, darkness of Iceland. It doesn't have maybe the same appeal as Venice, but the place isn't Venice, but it really still feels like the place it's trying to be. The puzzles are pretty well paced. You have some early, you have some late. They come in some variety. Some are more logically, others are more like looking through. And the characters are well written, I would say. Like there's not like they focused on few characters, but they actually made them all like quite well rounded. The voice acting, I think, is really good. This is also the last one with the old engine, so it's from 2017 or 18, I don't know.
15.
Or 15, yeah. So this is the last one. The next one will have a different engine, and I think this one looked really polished all around. Like the engine was just they took everything they could out of this old engine, and it really shined. And in the end, the ending felt well deserved, and yeah, I just liked everything about it.
I want to add that I actually found the plot quite heart-wrenching. Like, it really pulled at the heartstrings, which is something none of the other Nancy Drews have done. Like, you felt for the characters, and one character in particular. Okay, we can now start to use the Gunnar word. This game features the greatest character out of all of the Nancy Drew games, bar none. It stars our beloved Gunnar. He's compelling. You feel for the guy. He's witty. You just love being around him, and he calls you out on your misdeeds as Nancy. So he was. I was making a list of all the pros and cons, and I had to put 3 ticks next to Gunnar because he was. You know, it was already a great game, and he just carried it along with.
Yeah, and as people keep saying in chat right now, the mini games were actually okay. You actually don't have to do a lot of them. They're almost entirely optional. You can buy an entire shop full of souvenirs, but you don't have to do it. There's this game to play to learn Icelandic, which I played quite a lot because I didn't want to do the cooking one. But even the cooking mini game is worlds above the cooking mini games in the previous ones because it was actually some kind of puzzling where you had to. I didn't do a lot of it, but you had to do some kind of matching.
It really feels like they put together everything they learned across all these games for like 20 odd years and put this together. You know, their magnum opus.
I'd also like to add, this game came quite early in the marathon. It started and finished on the second day, and at the time everyone was like, oh, this is the best game we've had so far, this is going to be the best game of the marathon, and I think that wasn't too far off the mark.
Yeah, it's going to surprise nobody. This one belongs up in outstanding. We've covered how great the game was, looked, felt, sounded. Even the voice acting finally got good. The voice acting's ranged between mediocre to god-awful, and most of it being around pretty ropey. But in this one, really compelling. If you haven't seen any clips from this, if you had to watch any runs in the marathon, this would be one of the top ones. And if you were going to play any of these games, it would definitely be Sea of Darkness.
We should give a shout out to the net phone call about love.
Oh wow! So this one's been hotly contested by the Nancy Drew lovers who have come over to the community, saying Ned was definitely not trying to propose to Nancy there. He definitely was, and you just blew him right out the water.
I think that was the best voice acting because I could feel the pain in Ned's voice. And it just gave me so much joy.
Well, you tried to play it off. You're like, oh, the chat told me to do this. But no, you monstrously wanted to make sure that he is just your friend.
It's okay. In the end, Alpha brought Ned a sword so he could commit Sudoku.
Sorry, I don't love you, but here's your sword from Iceland. Your crappy souvenir sword that cost me like 10 euros.
No, it wasn't 10 euros. I played a lot of Learn Icelandic for that sword.
Yeah, I normally don't think that language puzzles make for good puzzles in the game, but this game had plenty of other great puzzles to it. Here's a real killer question though. Which is the better game, The Deadly Device or The Sea of Darkness?
Sea of Darkness for me.
Yeah, I agree.
See, I thought that Deadly Device really stuck to strong themes better than Sea of Darkness did. I also felt like it had more mystery to it, but I wouldn't say it's an easy call. Like I wouldn't be able to say one or the other personally. I mean, everybody else is saying Sea of Darkness, so maybe I'm very wrong, but I think they both deserve to stand side by side on outstanding.
I can agree with that. I think if Gunnar wasn't in Sea of Darkness, then Deadly Device would have been better, but I think he's enough to
If Gunnar just strolled into the laboratory and he was there in that game, then we'd be having a different discussion altogether. But who knows, we might end up with 3 games up and outstanding, because it's time to move along to our final game. Thanks for the input there, Alpha.
Thanks a lot.
Well now, adjust that flat cap and get ready, because it's time to cover Midnight in Salem. This was your baby, Helden. Tell us all about it.
Okay, so it's set in Salem, Massachusetts, I think is the state that Salem is in. And Nancy Drew has been called in because there's been a fire at a mansion, and nobody can quite figure out who the mansion belongs to. And then the plot goes from there.
But it goes to good places, right?
Yeah. I will just say I had a great time with this game, and I definitely think it deserves to be in the outstanding tier.
So I had my own. See, I wrote down my own synopsises here, and my one reads: Nancy is hanging out with her douchebag friends in Salem. I like to think my one's a bit more accurate. All the characters are horrible and unlikable, and even though the Hardy Boys are there, I just don't feel the Hardy magic from them.
They're like straight up incompetent as well. They make them so stupid.
Yeah, the Hardy Boys are terrible. There's some sort of like subplot where they're making their own organization, which I thought had already happened in a previous game. I thought they were like doing their own thing, and then they started a new organization, and in this game they're starting a new organization.
Well, the whole point of them being invited to the last train of Bloomin' Canyon was based on them being like well-known, competent detective folks, and then they're just back to being like blithering idiots again.
Yeah,
I think they were trying to reboot a lot of the characters, which I don't think worked very well.
No, I'm not sure what they were trying to do. Whether they were trying to do like a soft reboot of the entire series. I really hope they weren't, because it's really not a good game to start a soft reboot on.
Well, who knows? I mean, the next one's got to come eventually.
It's like they learned all those lessons about what makes a good Nancy Drew game in the game before, and then they decide, oh well, whatever. Let's not bother.
It became under new management at this point, right? They chucked out the old voice actor, chucked out the engine.
Yep.
I think something very misguided happened there, probably fueled by need for money. I'm gonna read off my list of negatives here. There were almost no bloody puzzles in the game, right?
True.
That you were just fiddling around with some devices that barely count as puzzles. The new engine looks god-awful, right? Although the game has been ugly for a long time, and it took a long time to actually get the polish that we saw in like Sea of Darkness, it did have a certain charm to it. Even Stay Tuned for Danger, right? Awful game, looks terrible, but in a way freakishly charming, unlike Midnight and Salem.
One of the puzzles that stood out for me that I remember seeing Helden do was when he was... You were in the bloody looking for the evidence in the lockers, and you'd expect some kind of puzzle to find the right evidence or something.
Yeah, no, there wasn't.
You were literally just opening all the drawers until you got the right one.
Yeah, it was just opening all the lockers. There was no puzzle to it whatsoever.
Yeah, the game wasn't really a detective game or a puzzle game. It was just a walking, talking simulator, and you're walking around this boring town speaking to boring people. The real contentious point here is, can we dig it out of the terrible category?
Why would we
if we're throwing like games like if we're throwing like Danger by Design in terrible because it's an awful game that's admittedly got some funny parts to it but still awful despite that, then certainly this game is worse than that because it's awful and there's also nothing even redeeming about it. It's not fun. It's just like what you don't even have like the crazy weirdness to it. It's just boring. It should be beneath all the others.
Yeah,
Just...
if anything, we need to create a tier below terrible for this game because it's
almost.
Yeah, there's almost nothing to it. I feel like for the first 50% of the game, there's no puzzles whatsoever, and it's just talking, and it's just the most boring conversations imaginable.
If you want to play a walking simulator, play a good one. Like I don't know, what's that Edith Finch one? That's supposed to be a pretty good one.
It feels like that's what they were trying to do, and I think that's part of why they changed the engine to what it is. They were trying to make it like Telltale Games or like Life is Strange or something like that, and they just failed massively.
Well, to be fair, I think this game got caught in development hell for like 3 or 4 years.
Oh yeah.
A huge delay. So like, that certainly didn't help it. It doesn't excuse it.
I was going to say that's no defense for what came out.
It's like saying, oh well, Nuke Nukem Forever isn't that bad. It was in development hell for 13 years.
Well, you could see it in the credits, because in the credits there's like an entire studio listed, and none of those people actually worked on the game. They just worked on the original version of the game, which, as far as I'm aware, was completely scrapped.
Yeah, it was really bad.
It's just a sad sign, and hopefully the next one won't be like this. Because I mean, yeah, if the next Nancy Drew game is like this one, it's developed in the same way with the same ideas behind it, then that would be a damn shame, wouldn't it?
I'd be very surprised if they went back after chucking everything out. I fear that this is the future of Nancy. Oh god, sounding like we're the biggest Nancy Drew fans. Oh, we fear for the future of it. You know, what's going to come next? What can I look forward to for the next one?
Will they ever rescue the series?
Well, I mean, to be fair though, there's like a sea of bland games that already exist out there. Like, it's not like we're saying Nancy Drew games are that good or anything, but at least there's something unique about them, right?
Yeah, there's something unique. There's something you can learn from them, right? You come away getting an experience that you're not going to find in another game or another series. So, you know, they are charming in their own right. That's why this isn't telling you that, you know, The Secret of the Scarlet Hand is a good game. It's that it's a good Nancy Drew game.
I think it's also very important to constantly remind ourselves that we're obviously not the target demographic. If you're a
That's
teenage
true.
girl, these games are probably a lot more enjoyable and inspirational than they are for us, I should hope.
But I can't even imagine this last one being interesting
Oh
for
no
a
no no!
teenage girl.
This
Yeah, I
this
mean,
one has
who
like
is going to
the-
enjoy Salem?
This one has like the second worst reviews on Steam. I think only JJ's game has worse ones. And from what I can tell, just from the community based around the Nancy Drew series, it was terribly received, and none of them liked it.
Hey, now, Sassy Detective has a whole review dedicated to saying how it's not that bad.
So
Well,
what
I
he's
think-
saying, Sassy Detective got bought out. Did they give him a review
Yeah,
copy?
I think Sassy Detective is doing a bit of bootlick in there, if you ask me.
Yeah, they're probably desperate to get early access to the next hot Nancy Drew game. Okay, so I think we're in agreement. It's worse than the worst, right? If you
Yeah.
had to, you would rather play any of the 3 terrible games than Salem. I know I would.
Yeah, I can agree with that, certainly.
Yeah, all the ones in the terrible games are like games that could be played as like punishment game. They like, especially Danger by Design is like so bad it's good.
They're all still Nancy Drew games.
It would
at
be
the end of the day.
hilarious. Yeah, it'd be hilarious to play along with like a stream and like have the Midnight in Salem wasn't. I wasn't bored by it, but then I'm a weird person anyway. But yeah, I would not recommend that game to anyone.
There wasn't even a
even
moment.
as a joke.
There wasn't even a moment in Salem where it felt like you had that moment of epiphany. You know, normally you solve a puzzle and you go, "Oh right, it all clicks now." It was just like you just do things there.
It just kept dragging on as well. Like every puzzle towards the end felt like it was the last one, and it just never was.
I mean, let's be honest, Harden. I wouldn't play Salem for all the skills wallets in the world.
They're all empty, so you're not going to get anything.
There was one, if I remember rightly, there was one good puzzle, and I will say not even good in like I would put this puzzle in like any other Nancy Drew game, and it would just be like a regular puzzle, not even outstanding. But it stood out in this game because it was like the only Nancy Drew puzzle that I could actually see in the game, and I think it was the only one that had a fatal error on it as well. And that was pretty interesting. Other than that,
do you remember when you were streaming Total War Warhammer and I was trying to convince you to take part in this?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you said that you'd stream the newest one because you thought it'd be.
Oh man,
yeah.
Helden was one of the hardest people to convince to join this.
I picked this game because I thought, oh well, it'll be the newest game. It'll be pretty easy to run. I won't have to faff around with like any of like the getting it in the right resolution or anything like that. Then I went on Steam and saw a terrible review, so I was like, oh well, it'll be so bad it's good. And it turns out to be this.
And you were just one off from getting Sea of Darkness.
Yeah.
Could have been the best one. Instead, you got.
We could be singing the glories of you, Helden. You showed us all the best Nancy Drew game, but instead you showed us the one that ruined the series.
True.
Oh, I want to give a huge shout out to Deathshed as well, because he came in with all of the DS games downloaded, ready to fill slots wherever they popped up. It was a huge help.
Some people blew through their games like way too fast, especially Max. Like he had 2 slots and he beat his in just a few hours. But Deathshed came in with the DS games, showing us the Hardy Boys with their own spin-off. And the games were god-awful. We're not reviewing them here, but don't even bother with them. These are the games you want to play.
Not everyone can be as clinical as me, Jake. I sat down and was like, right, I'm going to need 12 hours for this. Did it in 11.
Yeah.
Perfect stuff.
And you made the greatest Uristo Boom compilation we've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think I finished my game like literally 15 seconds before my time slot ended as well.
Yeah, well, you also had bad Freedom Internet issues.
Yeah.
So.
In the end, I got about as much time as I signed up for, though.
All right, we're coming to the inevitable end of all of this. This is really to round out the entire marathon. It came out of nowhere, came out of nothing, but it ended up being a huge lot of fun. So I'm very grateful to everybody that joined in, and with this we can put a lid on it. We now know the best of the best and the worst of the worst when it comes to Nancy Drew games. Now if you're watching this and you don't know anything about the marathon, you're just wondering about good games to play, Look at the outstanding and look at the greats. You want to play those, and then maybe work your way down. But don't go down to terrible or ruin the series unless you really want to see how grim it gets.
And just so that everybody remembers, because I remember that this was said earlier on during the stream, Jake has promised to debate Sassy Detective if he shows up. So if you're listening,
oh yeah, if the
send me a message. I'll get you in touch.
Sassy Detective is out there and wants to debate any of us on this tier list, I will be first in line to talk through our differences. Right? I mean, what are the most errant ones that they have? They have like Deadly Devices tier 3, Alibi of Ashes at tier 4, Shadow at Water Edge is tier 1. I mean,
they have the Deadly Device and Labyrinth of Lies and the Haunting of Castle Malloy in the same tier as Midnight in Salem.
Oh.
But watch, Sassy Detective's gonna show up and it's gonna be like an actual 14-year-old girl, and you're gonna have to.
That's not what I signed up for, but I guess it is what I promised to.
Can't go back on your word, Jake.
Never. Alright, well, thanks a lot, Fanofgaming, Helden, and Uristo, aka True Leveler, aka Corbin, aka Soap Dungeon Dwarf Making Extreme. Because we've gone through, we've tiered them all up, and we've completed what we set out to do. So cheers for joining, cheers to all the runners, everybody watching right now, and until our next magical marathon, so cheerio.